Greetings, everyone. And welcome to a particularly wide-eyed episode of Monster Party.
Monster Party! I'm wide-eyed! I'm so animated tonight!
Me too.
Yes!
Wow.
I'm excited!
Yeah.
I'm excited because I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth!
And I'm James Gonis.
Oh!
And this topic, wow. This is
excited.
massive.
It's
This
so
is a
huge.
massive
Gargantuan.
topic,
Very big.
and it's one that we've kind of touched on in the past. I made the little joke about, wide-eyed.
Right.
You will understand why that is pertinent because
That's right.
the topic of this episode
What is this amazing topic?
anime. I don't know. I guess that's anime sounds.
But
I don't know.
See, the funny thing is, we have dabbled in this. We've mentioned it throughout other shows, but
we've
to
brought up
dedicate a
films and-
whole show.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Before we even get started here, I don't want to disappoint people
Or piss anyone
or
off.
piss anyone off because we don't touch upon their favorite show. But here's the problem is with anime, it's such a massive topic. There's
massive.
so many shows, there's so
Huge.
many movies,
It's a history.
and there's so much history. We're not going to get to all of it.
But we're
So
going to touch on it.
we're going to do our best. We're going to
we give him an old Monster Party try.
Exactly. We're going to give you a Ken Burns style overlook.
We're going to
Yeah.
cover a few bases at least.
And perhaps maybe there'll be a volume 2 down the road.
Yeah,
perhaps.
totally.
Absolutely. There's so much here.
But there's so much to do. But Matt, who could we possibly get to do this amazing topic?
There was only one person. And this is a guy that I've known for years. We worked together on the Journeyman Project
The Journeyman
years
Project.
back.
Cool.
This guy is a game designer. He's written anime-based comics and done artwork. We're talking Speed Racer and Battle of the Planets, Robotech.
Robotech.
And, ladies and gentlemen, he is the president of animation at Harmony Gold, the people who bring us Robotech. Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Yune.
Tommy Yune!
Thank you. I'm
Robotech!
happy to be here.
Thanks for being here.
President?
President. You are the
Animation.
president of animation.
Mr. President.
Among other things.
Yeah? Tell me some of the other things.
Well, I started work at Harmony Gold back around 2000, and I thought it was going to be a short-term gig.
Right.
Because I liked anime a lot.
Yeah.
I was into Speed Racer. And after I had worked on Speed Racer, I was asked what other property that I would be interested in. And there was this one studio I liked the stuff from a lot. Tatsunoko in production in Japan. They had produced stuff ranging from Speed Racer to Battle of the Planets to Macross.
Macross,
which
Macross,
is
yeah.
known in the U.S. as Robotech.
3 shows, actually,
Yes,
right?
3 shows actually from the same studio.
Wow.
And Carl Masick put it together. And I was like a big follower of his work. We met, and we had been working together until he had passed away. Wow, it's been 9 years now. But at Harmony Gold, I initially started work as the creative director. And over the many years working on Robotech, I find myself also functioning as the curator.
Yes, yeah.
And I love anime history. Person that Carl worked with a lot is Jerry Beck. They work together.
Jerry Beck. We'd love to have him on the show, too.
Oh,
yeah,
he's
he's a wealth of
fantastic,
knowledge.
He and Carl worked together in one of the early distributors of anime in the United States, and that is Streamline Pictures.
That's right. That's where I got my Akira cell.
Oh.
Oh, here's a crazy anecdote about Streamline. When they acquired the rights for Akira from Japan, and this was, back in the late 80s,
80s,
early
yeah.
90s, when they started sending the materials for Akira to the U.S., they opened the boxes and they said, this is really weird packing material. Like, we see stuff flaking off of it. Like, it looks like chips of paint.
No.
And so what they used as packing material for the boxes were all the backgrounds. from the Akira movie. They just scrunched them up into little balls.
You're kidding.
God.
Oh my.
How many times have we heard this story, though?
Well,
the people who don't realize the gold that they have.
Well, at Disney, we know that back in the glory days and the golden days, they would wash the cells,
That's
of
right.
all this beautiful artwork to reuse the cell.
Yeah.
again.
Well, and I know during like the war days,
Yeah.
they kind of had to do that because
Sure.
they didn't have the material. But that's terrible.
That's actually where one film that's a wealth of knowledge is Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And so it talks about why the LA mass transit system was such a
Sure.
mess all through the 50s.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I'm just glad it's fixed.
it's actually working now. But
It's okay. It's fine.
Before I digress.
Do you have a car?
Yes.
You
I
might
do.
want to use that.
But the dip, that was
Yeah.
a real thing. A friend of mine, Steve Bennett, he was one of the rare outliers of someone who was of American descent. Well, actually, he's part American, part Japanese, and that was what allowed him to work in an anime studio back in his youth in Japan. And one of the things that they did was to economize the studio. After they would do these classic movies, these classic anime series, they would send the cells to the kids, like the children of the animators, and they would give them, all this,
Cleaning solution.
cleaning solution to wash the paint off the back of cells.
And you guys need
Another
to
reason to hate kids.
No. And you need to realize that what an animated cell, there's this drawing, then there's an outline, then there's painting. Basically, it's an individual piece of artwork. Each cell,
Right.
you need 24 cells to make a second of film. And and Tommy is holding one up right here in front of us. You need to understand that it's really a work of art.
Yeah.
And so when they're
And they don't do it anymore.
no,
For the most part.
no, yeah, it's still done, but not on the scale that it once was.
Mostly digital.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember when I was I cannot remember, I think it was maybe Comic-Con. And I forget what year, but it had to have been in the 80s. And I go by the Streamline table, and they've got Akira cells, production cells, and good ones. And I think I paid $100 for
yours?
Yeah.
That's great.
For Tetsuo, with his arm.
Oh, that's a
flying
great
out.
one.
Right,
That's
right.
a great
if,
one.
if it's a good production cell with the background
I
included,
don't have the background, no.
all right, it's probably worth hundreds of dollars. If it comes with the background, it'll easily be over $1,000.
Yeah. The background, that makes me sick just
But I mean, has
hearing that
that
story.
practice changed now, though? Because it seems like everything now is so...
It changed. So back in the 90s, in the late 90s, I loved to travel to Japan. And I would go to a store in Nakano, near Tokyo. And there was a store there called Mandarake.
Oh,
Yeah, we
And
had one.
Mandarake had a satellite office
Nakano
here in the US.
Broadway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we were all there.
Oh, yeah, Nakano Broadway. Yeah, exactly. So that's the biggest one because it's their
That place
oldest
is,
location.
we want to die there. So, like, really?
Paradise.
What are you buried there in the wall?
Yeah.
I got this back in the 90s. This was a cell of Mobile Suit Gundam.
Gundam,
And
yes.
just to show, this pack had 2 cells in it. So it was 100 yen, about the equivalent of $1.
$1.
And then $4.19 for the 2 cells here.
Gosh.
Gundam's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're throwing out some titles here, but why don't we start the whole anime? So, what is anime?
Yeah, that's for me, just so you guys know, because this is one genre field that I'm not really that all around familiar with. I mean, I've seen some anime films. I certainly grew up in the 60s on the cartoons, animated series that were brought over to America.
And that's where we're going to start. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like, all that stuff.
Right, but my question, though, is the particular look and style of anime as opposed to American animation or anything else. When did that start and when did it begin? Like, who came up with that?
Well,
look?
it started in the post-war years. I don't think there was any particular rule because all the animators, like someone I studied a lot was Tetsuo Yoshida. Him and his brothers were just trying to make a living after World War II in Japan.
This is like 40s, 50s?
Yeah, 40s, 50s. And they started a manga studio. They were just making comics for local newspapers. And then when television started to take off in Japan and the Japanese electronics industry was starting to try to sell television sets, him and his brothers suddenly came up with the idea, hey, maybe we can adapt some of our manga into anime series and we can sell this to the television stations. And so they took a old manga series that they had called Pilot Ace, It was a racing series. And then he adapted, that was rewritten into a more fleshed out series called MATT Go Go Go. And then that became Speed Racer, one of the first series to come to the US. And what was really interesting was, so this became Tatsunoko Production, which in the Japanese, it just basically works out to Tatsuo Studio. And so I consider him one of the greats up there with Osamu Tezuka, who created Astro Boy.
That was the next one, yeah.
But is he the guy who popularized the big eyes when it came to...
when did that
it was a
kinda
cult.
start?
So I don't think...
Where did that first start?
So look at early stuff, the early Astro Boy. It all was very evolutionary. So they were...
And before we go,
Yeah.
Astro Boy, if you don't know, is basically robot Pinocchio.
Yes.
Known in Japan as the Mighty Atom. It's about a scientist who his son gets killed.
Yes.
And he's just completely heartbroken.
He's distraught.
And he creates a robot to take the place of his son. But then he turns on the robot because
He's
he
frustrated.
realizes that it's not his son. It's a robot. But the robot does have feelings, and he gets sold to a circus.
Yeah.
Again, very Pinocchio.
Yes.
And manages to liberate the robots at the circus and find his way in the world and gets adopted by a scientist. And then things start to go well for him. And he goes on a number of outer space adventures and battles aliens.
But the interesting thing is Astro Boy, it's in black and white. The early ones that I saw, Matt, were in black and white.
I think they're all in black and white. Yeah.
Because what you were talking about was the whole Speed Racer, which was like vivid color.
Yes.
But the early Astro Boy, I remember
Astro Boy
being-
is even older. So,
Yeah.
so the earliest ones are Astro Boy and Gigantor. Those series started out in black and white.
Right.
And it's really interesting. One show that really nails down the transition for me was the earliest Spider-Man. Because before they used to advertise like, stuff being in stereo or HD, Spider-Man advertised, we're in color.
That's right.
With different colored letters.
Different colored letters.
Yes.
They wanted to make sure that even if you had a black and white TV, the
Right,
signal
right.
was at least in color.
And then you would go, Mom, Dad, we got to buy a color TV. And your parents go, we can't afford a color TV.
Was it Freeling Animation or what company
That
was that?
No, that was early Marvel. So
Mar-
that was
that was
Spider-Man,
Marvel
the
Animation.
animated series.
No, but
I
like,
don't,
the company
I don't know
was-
if it was Marvel
I don't
Animation
remember
or
that.
not.
But yeah, I remember that totally.
So you were talking about the look.
Yeah.
If you look at the earliest stuff like Astro Boy, it actually resembles like Betty Boop.
Yes.
Which is not the way
okay.
big eye cartoons look now. What happened was it evolved over the years. And so the early Japanese anime, they were trying to emulate a company that they admired in the US, and the Japanese love Disney.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so if you look at what, the early Betty Boop, the early post-war Disney cartoons, like the shorts, the Silly
Yes.
Symphonies, if you look, there's a little bit of a transition from that to the early Tezuka works. And then
Yes.
over the years, it just kind of gradually evolved.
Now, my understanding is it evolved to the point where the idea of where Disney's emphasis was motion, fluidity.
Yeah.
Anime is not so much into that. What you talked about, the eyes, they were saying that you could express a lot of what you want to convey in the eyes, whether it's like the little twinkle or a shudder or whatever, or something that the characters are trying to say you can do with the eyes instead of doing fluid motion. And what they concentrated on was beautiful artistic backgrounds and just beautiful looks.
Well, also the movement, what I noticed, especially in Astro Boy, when I go back to those cartoons and I watch them, they did a lot with limited movement, but there's a lot of energy to it. There's still movement, but there's just not that fluidity that you were talking about.
And it comes with what the body, the contortion of the body, the hair, what they do with the hair, which always boggles my mind.
So it was very stylized.
Stylized,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
here-
often very funny, too.
And here's what it just came down to. It came down to budget. So if you look at the earliest Marvel cartoons, like the Hulk and Iron Man,
Oh, yeah.
from the
Those are my
60s,
favorite. I love those.
But you notice that
Those are ridiculous.
They had so little. They had so little animation budget
Oh
for
my God,
those.
they had nothing.
It
It was moving a picture across a piece of paper.
They were recycling stuff.
And that's why I love them, because it's like instead of if someone's going to get punched in the face, you don't see the arm move. You just see the fist already collide, and you see the
Sound effect.
The sound effect move. Yeah. Great. God, I love those.
Hilarious.
But anyway,
So during the 70s and 80s, the trade-off that anime did was they would cut their frame rate in a half or a third. So instead of 24 frames per second, like American cartoons would do, they would do 12 or 8. And they would put all their energy into adding additional details. So if it was like a robot mech cartoon, they would have like additional shading, you know, that glimmer, like
Yes.
everything.
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
It's
basically
very
everything was made out of wet Jello.
Yes.
The way it was colored.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so people go, wow, you know, it looks great. And they would cheat a little bit for their first episode of the season and their last episode. Their budget would double. So they would suck you in, you know, into the pilot episode.
Into the story, yeah.
And then you get sucked into the story, and then you don't really notice that the animation quality is gradually dropping because by then you're addicted by, you know, is this character going to go with her or
Right.
him
Right.
or whatever?
He hasn't blinked since episode 35.
And like the things you were mentioning about the explosions, to keep things interesting, they would have limited motion, a lower frame rate. But then every once in a while, when like a pivotal thing happens, like something blows up, you'll
Right.
notice that the frame rate suddenly jumped up.
Yes.
You go,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that
So it gets your
explosion was
attention.
great.
It's true.
And then when you were talking about making the transition into color,
Yeah.
and you've got Speed Racer, which we've talked about in our
Yeah,
last
and which
in
just-
Wicked Wheels, which we
Yeah,
you know,
and it really stood out though. Those shows, like they would put them on Saturday morning TV or whatever in the afternoon, but they always, in addition to the Hanna-Barbera's shows and all that, like when you saw Speed Racer or Gigantor or Kimba the White Lion, they stood out from.
It felt like they were beamed in from another planet.
Well,
yeah,
like they
they
were
were-
really
Very different in tone. I mean, they were not like your standard goofy Hanna-Barbera kiddie stuff. They were
right.
sometimes pretty serious and
Yes.
edgy.
kind of violent.
Yeah.
I mean, Speed Racer we've talked about like the strangest, darkest, most bizarre, bonkers plots in that show, and it was
Yeah,
like.
I saw a driver accidentally fall into a river full of piranha and get eaten to death. In one of the Speed Racer episodes.
I mean, where can you see that in Huckleberry Hound? You're not going to see that. Or Squiggly Diddly.
I wish
you
I
know?
could.
I wish someone died
No,
in
but-
Squiggly Squiggly Diddly.
Okay, but you see my point here. It's like some of this classic anime was terrific because to me it treated the content more seriously. I was insulted by Snagglepuss and Squiggly Diddly, and, you know.
Yeah,
all the-
they-
Dark stuff. One of the first anime features I ever saw, they had it on in syndication in the middle of the day, a Toei feature called Jack and the Witch. And it's very hard to find now, but it was about a boy who lived for some reason home alone with his furry animals, and everything was fine. But then
Is this about you, James?
this little girl who was a witch intruded into his life, basically kidnapped him, and he's terrorized for 90 minutes. And it's like holy shit!
Weird.
And I'm 8 years old, and this is unlike.
Is this
anything-
about marriage?
Too close.
Yeah, it is true though. It's just like like you said, from another world, another planet, and
Yeah.
and somehow they got away. Like the networks and know like what it was. It was it's just a cartoon for kids. Like
Well, no. See, the problem is that, and I'm sure you, Tommy, of course, know all about this, is that because these things were from Japan and they were sold to these American markets, the American companies would take them and edit them to try to like just shave off all the edges and make sure that it wasn't too violent. But still, the stuff that we saw
Yeah.
is still like, wow.
yeah,
And the other thing, Sean, you need to remember, like the main networks back when we were growing up, you basically had the three big main ones, okay? ABC,
Right.
CBS, NBC. They didn't show those. Where Matt and I, we kind of grew up in
true.
the same area. We saw them it was more like our local TV stations. And this was
That's
throughout
true.
all across the country.
UHF.
Yes,
that was
UHF.
the gold mine.
Yeah.
But it's like they were the smaller. I don't want to say mom and pop stations, but the smaller stations, not the big networks. That's where we saw these things.
I only saw Kimba at 6 a.m. That's the only time I could see Kimba.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
on syndication. Yeah.
Now, Gigantor?
Yes.
Yet another Japanese series that they thought, had a little bit too much violence. They tried to make it a little bit more kid-friendly, but even with all of that happening, there was, I guess, a little bit of a problem when it came to the people who reviewed it. Now, I didn't even realize that anyone reviewed cartoons back then,
Right.
but they did, and there's one. Variety gave Gigantor this review, calling it loud, violent, tasteless, and cheerless cartoon.
Wow.
Which was strictly in the retarded babysitter class.
Oh,
No.
What does that even mean?
That was in Variety?
It was in Variety.
what does that
Who's
mean?
the reviewer there?
I don't know.
That's mean. That's mean.
I read it in Wikipedia, so it has to be true.
well, you're talking about the darkness of some of these things. It's also, I think, a cultural thing because in the U.S., comic books and Saturday morning TV were considered for kids. In Japan, adults read manga. It went across
true.
across
True.
the board.
Well, there was also the terror of what happened in the 50s when there was the blowback against comic books for adults.
Yes.
And there was the Comic Book Authority.
That's right.
That was
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
created.
Code.
DC Comics.
Dr. Wortham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, when you think about what Japan went through as a country,
In World War II.
yeah, they might have been toughened a little bit more when it came to the realities of the world.
Well,
And maybe that colored things a little bit
And my
in
understand-
how they presented children's entertainment.
yeah, you could say, I mean, maybe it had a darker look, or I think there was an emphasis on trying to be more anti-war. Talking
yeah.
about
Sure.
man's relationship with nature.
Yeah.
And
Kimba, definitely.
Well, Kimba too. And it's funny you bring up the dark stuff. If you recall, I mean, so Kimba's father is killed, and I think he talk to the
Caesar.
Yeah, he talks to the carcass of his father. Basically,
Yes, he does.
And I mean, that's really dark.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I mean, people make this comparison to Disney's Lion King, but it's like you don't see.
And there is a
There are
comparison.
a lot of comparisons.
yeah,
And they were
Totally.
friends, Tezuka and Disney. I think there was even a talk of them doing a project together, but then I guess it never came to fruition.
I'm waiting for the PlayStation crossover game like Kingdom Hearts with Kimba versus Simba.
Yeah, really. But like,
I would buy that.
yeah. Oh,
But
absolutely.
But just to give you guys a date, so Kimba the White Lion, this was made in '65, and I remember seeing it like maybe years later. This is like 69, 1970 out in UHF, as a kid, and
Sure.
and as a little kid, just being, I both loved the song and hey, Kimba the White Lion and stuff, but also a little freaked out that he's talking to his dad's carcass there, you
Sure.
know, and it was dark.
Didn't he eventually learn how to speak to people?
I think so, and
Yeah.
and then also there's. Well, then you
That's
have to
a
wonder,
trick.
what happens to the carcass of your dad, and
If
and
that's
you know,
not
but
going to
he,
get you in a circus,
but he helps,
nothing will.
But he helps save animals, and so it's like.
And there was
I like-
also, if I remember, there were some episodes where he tried to even talk the other animals out of eating meat.
Yeah.
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 And that's so strange. Like, that thing that's like built into the core of what you are? Have some kale.
wasn't and Astro Boy was pretty influential, right? I mean that kind of started a bit of a trend of that kind of space shows.
But also when we talk about man's relationship with nature, one of the ones that I loved that I remember as a kid was Marine Boy from 1966.
Kind of like an underwater
That was-
Astro
yeah.
Boy.
And I had mentioned this.
I barely remember that.
See, the funny thing is, Marine Boy was in color, and I remember, and so it had to do with it's Marine Boy's underwater and the underwater world. It's like the whole Jacques Cousteau thing. Do you
It's like,
remember?
what if
the Wonder-
Flipper was good?
No, and no, Flipper is good, and there was a white dolphin that hung out with him, and
Sure,
but
yeah.
also there was I forgot about this, but there was a really beautiful mermaid that hung out with him. And what I didn't realize is
Marina.
no,
different show.
No,
Sorry.
that's a different show. But her name was Neptina, and I think Neptina. And the weird thing was,
Where's that lawsuit?
yeah, and the weird thing was, you don't realize it as a kid, but as I looked at it as an adult, I'm like, oh my god, she's topless. She's swimming with the Marine Boy underwater, and she has a lot of flowing hair, so it's always
Strategically placed.
Yeah.
I've
hair.
said this before. I'm going to say it again. Japan, I love you.
All right, so this was one of the things that kind of like there was the Comics Code Authority. There
Yeah.
was standards and practices for
Yeah.
broadcast television.
Right.
yeah.
And so for children's programming, you couldn't have excessive blood and you couldn't have boobies.
Sure.
But you see the things as a kid,
covered boobies.
No. That's not what I see. As a kid, I didn't even think about it.
I know,
It's,
and so-
hey, that's his buddy. And she's a
You
girl.
did.
but-
Whoa.
Yeah,
You didn't even think about it?
Well, it's like you're innocent. You don't think. Come on, Matt.
Even at 4, I was like, yeah, come on.
Okay, so Sean's showing us a picture. Like every once in a she has like
she's pretty hot.
She has like a pearl necklace kind of thing.
Stop. Oh.
Wait, what? What? She has like it's a giant
it's a literal pearl necklace.
Oh,
yes.
You don't know the pearl necklace?
Oh, okay. Will you?
You've never listened to ZZ Top.
Will you get out of your mind out of the gutter, please?
All right, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Anyway,
when
go
this,
ahead.
when this podcast comes out, I guess I'm never going to be on SNL.
But she's his buddy, and how he has this special
Yeah,
rubber.
she's his buddy.
Yeah, they're buddies, and together they help.
Which half?
They help solve problems in the ocean, and he's got this special rubber suit on, and it's a special rubber
This
suit.
gets hotter and hotter. I couldn't
and to swim underwater, he has to chew this oxygum, the oxygen gum, you know?
Okay.
And so he chews the gum, and that allows him to breathe underwater.
I like that. I remember that part.
Yeah,
I do remember that part.
But
yeah.
I remember maybe there was a time when I was a kid, I thought, hey, maybe I'll be a marine biologist and I'll swim with.
And
like my brother.
and
My brother wanted to be
yeah.
one.
You'll meet Neptina.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah.
And she's going to keep saying, "Hey, my eyes are up here."
My giant eyes are up here.
Well, I'm just saying it's neat. It's ecological. You know, there's
No, that's
Very
cool.
Stroth says
You know, and
Rainbow
so-
is neat.
There was one that I watched, and that I guess you guys never watched, but I remember very clearly, called Tobor the Eighth Man,
yes.
Sounds
and
familiar.
broadcast black and white. And it's the precursor to the $6 Million Man
Yeah.
and RoboCop. And it's a guy who is, hit by a car. Scientists put him back together with the cyborg body. Now the cyborg
Wow.
body has super strength, and he can shapeshift his face to look like other people. He can do all these things. But the one
He has a boss named Oscar Gulmanson.
No.
Goldmanson. Well, that's about as far out as
Yes,
you can get.
come on,
Goldmanson. But I watched it recently. I don't remember this as a kid, though. When he needed extra strength, he would smoke a cigarette. No. He would smoke a cigarette. He had this cigarette.
I
he'd
don't
pull out,
remember
and he'd
that.
Smoke the cigarette, and he'd like, and he was ready to go back into battle. And I
Wait.
as a kid, I do not remember this
What's
at
the
all.
date on that? Is that
It's
it has
the
to be
60s.
60?
It's the 60s,
Was
yeah.
that 66?
Yeah, because
too?
if it was made now, it would be vaping instead, right?
Exactly. Okay, yeah, because the way I know about it, Matt, is there were some battery-operated toys made of the character.
wow.
I knew of it. I had never seen any of the cartoons, but I didn't know about the smoking.
Yeah, no, he smoked a cigarette, and I watched it recently, and I was like, oh, hey, there's the cigarette.
He couldn't chew gum like Marine Boy.
And from some of the things that I read, I guess around the time that the cartoon hit the States, that they were just implementing the no cigarette ads.
Right. He was like hanging
And
out with Joe Camel.
Yeah, right, yeah, like the worst possible role model ever. But one of the times I went to Japan, I found a little candy toy that's black and white, beautifully detailed, of him with the cigarette. And it's a prized possession.
I'll bet.
Yeah. But that was a great one. Those are the ones I remember from my childhood. And it seemed like I watched them and then they kind of went away.
Yeah.
Until
right.
like we get into the 80s, and then we're talking about stuff like, Battle of the Planets.
Well, isn't that like the late 70s? Because
Is it late 70s?
Because what I remember is when Star Wars came out, Star Wars was huge, and then all of a sudden everyone was trying to scramble for space stuff.
Yeah, right.
And there was a TV show. Bob Wilkins was Captain Cosmic. Channel 4,
yes.
Captain Cosmic and his Wonder World about 2T2. And they started out by showing Flash Gordon serials, but then they started to show these animated cartoons, Star Blazers,
right?
which is all out of space. But Tommy,
Which
you
is Battleship Yamato.
Yamato.
Space Cruiser
Yamato.
Yamato.
and you
Space
pointed out to
Cruiser
me, which I
Yamato.
didn't realize, this was actually made way before Star
yeah,
Wars.
so Space Cruiser Yamato is a 70 series. It came out about at the same time, but I think it was just happenstance that they were
Right,
covering
right.
similar topics. But it found its audience. And then Battle of the Planets, which was called Gatchaman in Japan, came out even earlier. It was in the early 70s. It's got a very 70s groovy tune
Right.
style to it. But I want to touch on to something else about the Japanese style of storytelling. Is
Please.
with the earliest stuff, they were all standalone episodes. Like you'll notice, most of this first season of Star Trek were standalone episodes.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Right.
But then by the time you get to the mid 70s, when you see the $6 Million Man, they started experimenting with longer form
Yes.
Like
storytelling.
story arcs.
Where they would have 2 to 3 episode arcs, to find out what happens to the Venus probe.
Yes.
Watch the next episode,
That was great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Speed Racer started experimenting with that, where they started to have 2-parters and 3, like the Mammoth episode.
Sure,
That was
yeah.
a 3-part episode with the Mammoth car. And then by the time you get to Space Cruiser Yamato, they do long form storytelling. The whole season is one big long story.
It's a soap
Right.
opera.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Which is pretty kind of rare for an animated
Groundbreaking.
series back then,
so that was
For a cartoon
groundbreaking.
especially.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Outer space is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean,
Japan does great
Oh,
space.
just beautiful backgrounds.
And one of the greatest storytelling gimmicks that they had to suck you back in was when the Earth was initially bombed in the first episode. They say the radiation is so bad on Earth that unless they bring back some special alien device to rid the Earth of radiation. Everyone will die in 1 year. Now, not 384.5 days.
Yeah,
no,
1
exactly
year.
365 days. So they have to leave Earth to find this alien device and bring it back. And in the early episodes, they would put this countdown at the end of every episode, 356 days left.
Oh, geez.
And you would go, okay, that's not so bad, right? But then when you're at the midpoint of the series, they were only halfway in, and then it says 72 days left. You start to go, oh my goodness, are they going to get there in time?
Right.
Like
It's a
you
clever
realize
idea.
that half of the year is already up and they're not even at their destination yet. And so amazing storytelling technique. And I mean, it worked. I was so into it. I was surprised that at that time that, I didn't remember any other cartoon of the time that was doing that. Now,
Right.
in the post Game of Thrones era, of
Yeah,
course.
now it's like everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But like, I want to talk about Battle of the Planets,
Yeah.
which was the Americanized name of the show. It was made into Japan originally as Gotchaman,
It was, yeah.
and then
And very different.
How much-
In a lot of ways.
was it Sandy Frank? I think
It was Sandy Frank who
Sandy
adapted
Frank,
it.
yeah.
So they did a clever thing, which was they created this robot called Seven Zark
Seven Zark 7.
who resembled R2D2
Alan Ladd.
a lot if
With-
R2D2
not Alan
could
Ladd.
talk.
And,
was-
and had a cape for some reason.
Yeah.
So this robot was not in the original
Yeah,
series.
it was newly made animation to kind of like
Specifically.
bracket the story.
Yeah, so if you look at the style very carefully, the meat of the episode, which was the original Japanese animation,
which is
that
really
was,
cool.
That was done in Japan. And then you would have the Seven Zark 7 character, and it resembled a lot of Hanna-Barbera to me, the style.
Yeah, and Alan Young was the voice, right?
Alan Young, yes.
In fact, there was also, who was it? Casey Kasem also voiced.
Oh yeah, who's
as
Mark?
well.
I think.
Yeah, he's Mark, yes.
And
Yeah.
Ronnie
Yeah.
Shell as Jason.
Yeah.
And Tiny.
Yeah.
No, it was Mark.
And guess
Jason.
what?
And-
Tiny was the fat guy.
Yeah, right.
Always works.
And one person from the Hanna-Barbera troupe who did a great job on that was Kurt Hoyton. He tied it together with the theme song.
Yeah, I
So
love the
if
music.
you listen to the main theme of Battle of the Planets,
Dun, dun, dun,
it sounds
dun,
like
dun,
it sounds like the
dun.
third season of the Super Friends. Remember Challenge of the
Yes,
Planets?
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have the soundtrack to Battle of the Planets. It's a two disc. It's fantastic. It has the. It has
I have them on 16.
It has the bumper commercials with
Yeah.
the Battle of the Planets.
Have I earned my
awesome.
nerd hat?
Oh, definitely. Well, but what you have to touch upon, and you
Okay.
pointed this out to me, I think when we were having dinner at a Mexican restaurant, but in the original Gatchaman stuff, that there's some vast differences when it came to things that they could not really include in the American
Like-
version.
like-
Right,
For
so-
example,
All right, so each episode was slightly shorter. They filled up the time with Seven Zark 7.
Right.
And there was a villain. I'm trying to remember. Was it Voltar?
Zoltar. He was cool.
Yeah, so Zoltar was cool. Problem was
more than you know.
Oh yes, I heard about
yes.
this. Yes.
Problem with the American broadcast was he was an alien, but he was an alien who was cross-gender. He was a hermaphrodite.
No.
in the Japanese.
All right,
version.
now, do you want me to...
Kids
do you want
love
me-
hermaphrodites.
Now-
Oh, so are we going to do a spoiler alert here?
Yeah, this is
No,
a
you
major-
have to know this.
No,
Yes.
okay.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
All
So
right.
if you guys, you may want to skip a little bit further if you don't want to hear about this great show.
Okay, so there were some episodes of
Gatchaman.
Gatchaman where Zoltar looked more male, more masculine. And he was like more macho. He spoke with a deeper voice.
Right.
Well, actually, he was always voiced the same. So he was always masculine.
Okay.
But then sometimes in some episodes, I would go, wow, he's got some softer features. He's put on his lipstick this morning.
looking good.
He's looking pretty good. I would swipe the other way on that one,
Battle of the Planets. Are you fucking with me?
Really?
Yeah.
So
I don't remember this.
So what happened was Zoltar was actually flipping genders throughout the season.
No.
And the writers in Japan just never made any big deal about it. But I guess in the U.S. they wanted to downplay this completely.
Right.
But what was the
Yeah.
intention? But what
You
was the
think?
intention? What was the
So,
intention?
so
of the
there was
writers?
a crying game moment in the series where Mark meets this hot blonde, in the series.
Oh, no.
And
Poor Mark.
And the hot blonde turns out to be a spy working for Zoltar, right? And then in the very last episode, Mark tries to unmask Zoltar when they have a major confrontation. And then there's a blinding flashlight. She hits him in the face or something, and she runs away. And all he sees is long flowing blonde hair. And he realizes the blonde he got with earlier might have been him.
Oh.
No.
Yeah. But
Best piece of ass Mark ever had.
Well, but they didn't have like the crying game like there's a wiener or anything. They didn't do that.
It's the Phoenix.
no, instead you have 7 Zark 7. So
But that's so bizarre to think that
is
the original like
wild.
That's so crazy. That to put in an animated show for kids. I mean, it's just weird.
I love the Japanese.
I love it, but it's just like so bizarre, especially for back then.
I mean, look at the works of Yoshitaka Amano. He's the Final Fantasy designer. He had created a series in the mid '80s called Maspida, and
Yes.
what happened was he was a cross-dressing pop star
Okay.
in that series,
Which was part of Robotech,
yes,
right?
and
Yeah.
so I guess this was kind of part of the change in attitudes in the '80s, in which that was allowed to slide. Now in Latin America, I guess the censors there couldn't deal with it, so they rewrote the character as being female all the time because he had long flowing hair and had some effeminate features.
Interesting.
But then they wrote themselves into a corner because they didn't realize at the end of the series he meets a girl and they get together. So, instead of
And then he goes to the men's room
so
to get a condom.
so instead of writing a cross-dressing character, they accidentally wrote him into the corner as being, a lesbian.
Oh my God!
No matter how you slice it, it works.
Yeah, it's wild. This is stuff that I didn't even
That's
know.
great.
It's pretty
That's
awesome,
so
though, that
My
they-
mind is just blown.
Just to be that subversive back then, even that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know,
So
This is like 70. What? This is
but it
78,
seems like
79?
in certain ways, they're-
85. So it wasn't put together as anything weird.
Right,
or-
it was just a
part
thing,
of the
right,
story.
right.
It,
Which is cool.
it seems like in certain ways that like Japanese culture wasn't hung up on that kind of stuff at all. Like it was like,
Right,
oh no,
right.
this is just interesting, and this will be a good plot device.
right.
yeah.
Which is,
Okay.
that's awesome.
That is wild. Okay, so
Yeah, because I mean, Battle of the Planets, I loved.
Yeah.
That was a show that really stood out for me.
And this is where I love the storytelling style of Tatsuo Ishida, who also worked on Speed Racer. And, they suck you in with better animation in the early episodes, and then they get you in with the story. And in Speed Racer, you were always wondering, oh, that mysterious Rex Racer.
yes,
his
Razor
Right,
X.
right,
Racer X.
You're not going to tell
With
me
secret-
he was a girl too.
No. He was a macho dude.
So Rex Racer was
Racer X.
the alternate identity of Racer X. Oh, wait. Oh, did I just spoil that series for you?
Oh, spoiler.
Wait, no, we know,
okay,
no,
all right,
we know
all right.
who Racer X
Okay,
is.
by this point-
all right, Racer X is secretly Rex Racer, Speed Racer's older brother.
Older brother.
Right,
no,
right,
but they
right.
say that in the show.
Yeah, so they say it in the show.
We
They
know
say-
it before Speed knows
Yeah,
it.
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
If you a little late.
If this ruins your day, then you got bigger
Yes.
problems.
So,
Yes.
so they say it in the
show.
series.
And he's a big muscular dude.
Yeah, he's
Speed is a little scrawny.
Strange
a little-
proportions,
Yes,
too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But he's macho.
He's top heavy.
Yeah.
So it's brought to you in narration like a Folgers commercial.
Yes.
Like, will Speed secretly find out that
Racer X
is
his
really his long lost brother Rex.
Yes.
And
Will Trixie ever shut up?
in the second to last story arc,
Yeah.
they had this climactic episode. And I remember this was actually voted in TV Guide as one of the most influential episodes of TV. Which was when Speed Racer starts to suspect
Yes.
that Racer X is related to him.
Yes.
And then he confronts him. He says, Racer X, I do have one more question for you. Are you my brother? And then the thing that just blew me away was the reaction was he just punches Speed Racer in the face and knocks him out cold. And
Yeah,
then runs
he's my
away.
brother.
See, it's funny. That's what my brothers would do. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Because they were both so much bigger than I was. I
love you, brother.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say that. I would just say, "Are you?" And they would turn around and hit me. Yes. Yes.
But
That's awesome.
I bring that up, and this was because there was a similar storytelling gimmick in Battle of the Planets, which is all the characters, they were selected. I mean, you think how irresponsible is it to assign teenage kids
Yeah.
on these death-defying missions?
And isn't one of the kids a little slow?
Keop.
Isn't and he
only in the American one.
What was the
bugs
deal
the hell
with
out
Keop?
of me.
It's only a speech delay. Don't hold anything against him.
But then was that in the original Japanese
No, it
version
wasn't,
too,
right?
though? Did he make the
But he
sound?
makes-
Isn't it?
Yeah, so
sound.
he was a little bit special.
He was?
Okay,
Even in
yeah.
the Japanese one?
Yeah, so he was-
okay.
Okay, all right.
He
So
would like
he had
a
a little,
yeah,
a little
quirky sound.
mental.
Did he speak in a
had
weird-
mental
No, not-
deficiency?
twin
there.
language?
No mental deficiency. I
No,
would just say
no.
quirky.
Okay.
I wouldn't trust him with any big mechanical equipment. Here,
Well, I don't think
you-
they did
Yeah.
necessarily, did they?
Here, operate
I mean,
this.
I guess-
this laser gun. Really? You're only gonna kill everybody if you.
Yeah, he's who you throw out to be a diversion.
You also had Princess, who was pretty
Shoot at
cute.
the special kid.
All right, Tommy, give it to me. Go ahead.
No, so you even hear it in the opening narration. They were all selected because they're orphans.
That's right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
5 orphans.
Yeah,
as
5 orphans.
one.
And then you find out that that's actually a lie.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
You don't remember that? No. Near the end?
No, because I'm
don't
so
remember.
irritated
They
with.
they were all related to
So,
speed racing.
so towards the end, as they're getting close,
Spoiler alert.
to defeating Zoltar, and they're doing more and more deep space missions instead of defending the Earth.
Yes.
There's this Crimson group led by another group of mysterious 5, just like the Gatchaman group,
Right.
who are always saving their butts when they get in trouble, and it's led by an older man. And so Mark starts to admire this older man because he resembles him, leading a team like him, but it's an older group.
Right.
And then on the very last episode, they're supposed to detonate a bomb that's supposed to stop this reaction in the Van Allen radiation belt that will destroy the atmosphere of the Earth.
Right.
And Mark says, well, I'm going to stay behind and blow this up because I am the leader. I am supposed to do this. And then the other man says to him, well, no, I'm going to do this instead. And he goes, on what grounds? And he goes, because I am your father. And then he throws him in the airlock and shoots him out of the ship and blows it up.
Really? Wow.
It's great
Quite
storytelling.
sophisticated storytelling for a cartoon like that.
And
yeah.
this was before
Empire.
Strikes
Ooh,
Back.
wow.
So, when
You're
get
not
that
going to
kind
tell
of heavy,
me that George Lucas borrowed an idea from someone.
have you ever seen George Lucas in Love?
Yes.
That's an awesome USC
Yes.
student film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
That's amazing, though. Yeah, that's. I don't remember that. It was on for several seasons, right? Battle of the Planets.
Battle
I
of
mean,
the
it was-
Planets. Yeah, it was. The other seasons of Battle of the Planets, unfortunately, didn't get picked up by the same rights groups and was adapted differently. They were called Eagle Riders.
But wasn't it also reworked as G-Force?
Yes, it was also reworked as G-Force
Was
by
it the same
Turner.
series?
It was the same series, just different. And this is one of the
confusing.
things that gets confusing with fans who follow anime. Like Akira, there was the streamlined dub back from the 80s, and now it's been, because rights went elsewhere, it's been redubbed. And one of the things that Disney also tends to do is Totoro. Love this from Miyazaki. I watched the 20th Century Fox version before the Disney version, and the dubbing production on that was actually done by Troma Films.
Really?
And they did a fantastic job.
Really?
Better than Disney?
Really?
No, it's just different. Like
different.
Disney likes to hire stars.
Yeah.
So they're attracting
some
you
big
with
stars.
Oh, I see what you're
Dakota
saying. Okay,
Fanning.
got it. Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
So they get all these big names to work on it because it attracts, and they do good work.
Yeah, and they do great
Yeah, they're
voice
not-
work.
Yeah. But it's just that, I'm just talking about my, little nostalgia nerves. And what just triggers that is when I hear the old voices from
old
back
ones.
Oh,
then.
sure. It's like for us when we watch the Godzilla films.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
the AIP
And
dubbing.
even the
that we
streamline Akira,
Yeah.
I will always remember those voices. They're a little too cartoony, but I have a fondness for them because that was the first
So-
thing I heard.
am Tetsuo.
Yeah.
loved. So wait,
Yeah.
so there are 2 different dubs of Akira.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are.
So like when I saw it in the theaters when it came out, that was the original.
That was the original Streamline dub. That
Yes.
was the
Yeah.
version that
Is
Streamline
that the better
released.
one? Is
It's
that the,
just
It's just different.
It's just different.
So if
I kind of prefer the newer one myself.
if I could just say, because we have talked about it in the past a little bit, but just to go over this amazing anime film called Akira. This is a beautiful film. This is from 1988, and my understanding is it was the most expensive animated film ever made up to that time.
Yeah.
And when you look at the drawings and the animation, I mean, to me, it's not like limited animation. They do beautiful fluid stuff in
yeah.
this.
It blew me away when I saw it in the theater.
Just if you say to yourself as a listener, "Oh, I don't like anime," Guys, I'm going to tell you, this post-apocalyptic world, it's beautifully drawn. The story is terrific. You don't know where it's going to go. There's like action and violence.
It has
and
like a Blade Runner kind of neon
and
future
it's,
world.
And the music, everything about it is so cool. And when I went into the theater, I had no idea what I was going to see. And I sat in a packed, it was a huge theater and it was packed, and the audience was just blown away. And I would recommend, if you're not sure, well, about this kiddie thing or limited animation,
It's not kiddie at all.
check out Akira.
And it's directed by Katsuhiro Otomo.
Yeah.
And did he did the original manga?
Yes, he did the original manga. And what's really interesting is this same thing happened to Battle Angel Alita. Is Otomo was working on this, and at the same time, he still had a monthly manga to put out. And he was only halfway in. He didn't know how it was going to end.
No.
Yes,
Jeez.
he did not.
Are you kidding?
He genuinely did not know how his story was going to end. And also, he was limited to a 2-hour movie, a feature-length movie.
Right.
And so he had to rewrite the third act to make it fit within a feature-length film.
Right.
Wow.
And if you read the manga, and it was one of the longest mangas that ever
Yes.
came out.
Yeah.
It
It's
took
really
years
great.
and years. It's
Yeah.
great. And so this is one of those things where I wished he would make an Akira too.
Yeah.
Because-
you can. You I think you could.
Because halfway in, the big explosion within Tokyo was only at the halfway point of the manga.
Really?
Yeah.
Now the funny thing
But
about
the way
this,
that it ends, though, by the way,
which
is great.
let's-
It's a good way to cap at least the first chapter
I don't
of
want
that series.
I don't want to give that away. I'd really like to have our listeners check it out. And the funny thing is, if you're not familiar with this, within the world of anime and in cult films or whatever, it's such a popular film. There's been talk about doing a live action film for
a while, yeah.
years.
But now, wasn't this like one of the first big internationally successful animes?
It was
feature films.
and it was cyberpunk. It was
Yeah,
it
very
was just at
very
that
much
time,
along.
yeah.
It was in the vein of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Right.
But paradoxically, I heard it did not do well in Japan.
Initially, no.
Akira.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here was
Wow,
the
really?
issue with that was it was expensive. It was
Yeah.
very expensive, but it did well overseas. And you could say the same thing about what happened with Speed Racer. The series creator, Tatsuo Ishida, he was a huge fan of American culture. He loved cars. He loved Elvis's hair. And
Ascots.
yeah.
Chimps.
Ascots, just as Scooby-Doo was just coming out.
Sure.
You've heard the phrase, as American as a chimp?
No, I don't think I've heard
It's an
that.
old one. Yeah.
Okay,
Go
but
ahead.
anyway, you were saying.
But yeah, it's interesting to see anime that hits it much bigger overseas than they do just
Right.
in Japan alone.
Right.
But I also like the element of the story of Akira that involves kids with these incredible psychic powers and telekinetic powers. And that's kind of the thrust of the story. And one boy who is given these powers, and they're so strong in him that he becomes almost like a god.
Yeah.
And it's like his friends have to take him down.
Yeah.
But it's so rich in its imagery. You could just watch the backgrounds of that
Yeah.
movie
Yeah, yeah.
and be thrilled. It's so good. One of my favorite films of all time.
I mean, I didn't realize that the stuff that I loved was anime. When I saw Akira, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so great. It can actually be a movie, this stuff. And then it seems like I was started to see more of these anime movies come out. And they were very popular. And in fact, it was, I believe, John Lasseter, who at the time was, the big hero at Disney with Pixar and stuff. It was Lasseter who loved this stuff too and convinced Disney to start releasing these amazing anime films.
But wait a minute. Before even that, you had films like Ghost in the Shell
I was just going to say that one. Yeah.
and Ninja Scroll, which is this wonderful samurai movie, but with demons and the visuals and the action, just the kinetic pace of that film. If that's a film that you've never seen, do yourself a favor, because that one is...
No,
I remember watching that with my dad, and my dad is not Mr. Anime. But we're watching it, and he's kind of out of the corner of his eye watching this action, and then he sits down. He's like, this is really good. I'm like, yeah, it's a whole industry in Japan. Yeah.
Right.
I have one guilty pleasure from that era. You brought up Ghost in the Shell. That was by Masumi Shiro. And one early work that he kind of downplays because he was young, he was new in the industry, but I think it was a good sign of his talent, was Black Magic M66. And it's overlooked a lot.
Yeah, I don't really know that one.
Okay, so this was when he had no money, he had no track record, and it was based on a manga where the reviews were mixed because he was new.
Okay.
And this was one of the first anime where I actually felt a genuine sense of tenseness in the storytelling. Because a lot of times in the anime, you get spectacle, you get pretty backgrounds, pretty animation, but the story doesn't grip you.
Right.
And that happens a lot.
Yes.
But in this one, here we have a storyteller who had limited budget, limited animation, but the story was so taut, and it was only about an hour long. It wasn't even a full-length feature.
Really? It was like made for video? Kind of?
It was made for video. And right there, and then I already realized, wow, this guy's going somewhere. And what was interesting was there was a robot who was being tested as a military robot, and the creator of the robot, just for fun, put his granddaughter as a target in the military robot. But it was supposed to be set just to like a harmless, find a flag mode. But then while it was being delivered by the military, the vehicle it was in crashes and the program is damaged. And now it's set to destroy the target mode.
Oh my gosh. No. That's great.
And so...
Never do the target your granddaughter gag.
So the news reporter, who's the only one who knows because everyone else around who knows about it has been murdered, is trying to find this granddaughter and rescue her from the robot. And what was great was it just showed all these great scenes of military action where the military are trying to stop this robot, but because it's a new military prototype that they haven't finished testing on, they don't know how to deal with it because it's something new they've never seen before.
That's
Wow.
cool.
That sounds great. And now, are these available pretty much everywhere, or is this hard to find?
I think this kind of comes under the giant robot category where...
Okay.
Sometimes it's really hard to find on video, and when you don't know who the rights owner is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's like, did somebody post it on that channel called Whack-A-Mole? I mean, YouTube. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So can I ask, is the otaku movement something that started with anime?
Well,
Does it
otaku
explain
is
what that is?
Yeah,
I mean-
it's funny is Hideaki Anno, the creator of Evangelion. He once visited my office while I was working in games down in San Diego,
Wow.
and then he saw my workplace and he goes, "Yeah, otaku." And I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm honored.
Yeah.
But somebody-
And look in the mirror too. Right? I mean,
and how do you categorize otaku? Because I find
there's
it's
different
fascinating.
kinds, right? I mean,
yeah. So it's basically an anime nerd.
But is it like an obsessive, full, all-on, like you get into a particular thing so
I think it's-
hardcore?
I think a good analogy is the term Trekkie.
Okay.
Like back in the day, it was somebody to be ridiculed, made fun of, and now people are now that it's become part of
Now
pop
that
culture.
nerds are
Yeah.
now the nerds are awesome.
Yeah, and
everywhere.
now otaku is just used in terms like otaku-san.
it's just like super energetic fan base.
Yeah.
really,
yeah,
right?
but wouldn't you say though that otaku, when it comes to Japanese culture, how they view otaku, and I know that terms like that, just like with nerd, they change over time.
Yeah.
But I know that the last time I was over in Japan, you used the word otaku, and that meant like kind of like a shut-in, someone who never left their house, or they were a little too into that girl singing group, or slept with a weird pillow, or
Yeah. So I mean, okay, this is a really big social issue of discussion within Japan right now. They have a lot of great entertainment in Japan, and
They
you
do.
and you have a lot of shut-ins. They're just happy with their entertainment, and the cost of living in Japan is high.
Yeah.
And so you guys just decide, it's so expensive here. Why bother going out, try dating? I'm just gonna.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
And what? Stayed home with your pillow?
Yeah.
But wait,
So what's going on?
They make really good pillows
What's going on in
now.
Japan is right now they have a collapsing birth rate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, right now there's this push in Japan. Young people just go out and meet.
So this brings me to the next thing that I'm fascinated by, because
Yeah.
I had heard that around the 80s is also when is it called hentai?
Yeah.
But what is explain what hentai is?
Okay. So
Let me show you.
I find this fascinating though, because like anime is what it started, right?
No, it is a subset of anime.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's like basically, how do you find that a video format has succeeded when a lot of adult material start coming out for it?
Right.
Like that's when you know
adult
VHS.
content.
So hentai is
I
basically
see. I feel like-
the adult content
Yes.
of the anime
I
manga.
see. I see.
Yeah.
It's like young women and girls.
Was it
and,
like Legend of the
tentacles.
Overfiend? That
Yeah,
wasn't
that was
like
one- yeah,
that was
yeah.
wasn't that the one that kind of put it on the map here?
Yeah. I mean, so now it's, even though it's kind of like that hush hush whispered about subset of the culture, it's there. It's huge. There's stuff called doujinshi in Japan, which is unauthorized, unlicensed comics. So what'll happen
Like
is
underground comics?
underground comics. So what'll happen is really talented kids will just draw a lot of their characters doing things that they want them to do. And sometimes
see.
there's harmless, good, fun storytelling, and sometimes there's alternative storytelling that will make your toes curl.
Adult content.
Yes.
I mean, that they'll take like
understand.
actual famous popular characters from other things and
Yeah, basically how 50 Shades of Grey started.
But would
Okay.
you?
Well,
Would
it's like slash fiction, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
And then
Yeah.
they'll take these to comic conventions there, like Comic Cat or Comic Fest, and then they will sell them at their booths, right?
Yes.
And sometimes these can sell really well.
Yeah, so
it's illegal. 'cause
there's
you're
there's
taking,
so
you know-
much.
is it illegal?
Well, you're
don't
taking someone else's creation.
It's pretty
and
common
you're
practice, though.
well, you're selling someone else's creation. You're basically stealing.
Well, I agree, but is it illegal?
yeah.
Technically, it is. But the thing
how
is,
much-
it's so commonplace in Japan. One of the things that they even do in Japan is they have a thing called Wonderfest.
Yeah,
Which is-
sure. Yeah, I'd love to go someday.
They'll do it for a short time each year. They'll just let anybody just make whatever they want out of somebody else's IP. And for the duration of
Really?
that convention, they just get to go
Really?
and just do it. And
That's cool.
what'll happen is the funds raised from that convention, they'll just kind of pay off all the IP owners to kind of look their other
Oh, I
way.
see. Okay.
Interesting.
For what happened. And, it becomes kind of like what you call a pop culture incubator. To find where the next big talent will be, because some big names have actually come out of
Right.
that industry.
It's also promotional too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right,
that's
right.
the thing that I think sometimes when people get a little bit too zealous, coming down on someone who's maybe doing something with somebody else's copyright.
Yeah.
That, hey man, this person is promoting your item. Now, granted, Star Wars doesn't necessarily need promoting. But there are certain things that, like, hey, why not let them play with this? It's,
Right.
Most of the time, it's harmless fun.
Well, you get into a really touchy subject. I mean, there are like tons of fans who have tried to make their own Star Trek
True,
things
yeah.
and put them on YouTube, and
True.
Paramount has come down.
Yeah.
They used to let it
They're
slide.
kinda known now
and,
for-
and,
yeah.
and Paramount is not the only one.
Walter
They-
Koenig, remember he was he
That's right.
he did a bunch of these series that were Star Trek that were online, but then
They weren't-
he was stopped and they had to do the next chapter of the storyline.
Change some
by-
names.
Yeah, change the name and not use the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And instead of calling it Starfleet, calling
Yeah.
it Star Force or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And I mean, there are ways to kind of get around it, but it just seems a little petty considering no one's making a mint on these things.
Yeah.
Well, I think
really.
the idea is when you are an owner of that content, you want to make sure that people do not get confused.
Okay, I can see that.
And also, as the owner or holder of that property, you want to protect that property.
No,
so that's why
You make sense.
Disney is very. When anyone tries to do something funky with like a Snow White character or
Yeah.
the princesses, they jump on them. I mean, there's
And Toho's kind of like that too.
Toho's
right?
like that too, and this is great. I'm glad Sean brought up the whole adult content thing, but I'd really like to get
No,
back
no,
to some of the-
we're not done with this yet.
the adult.
There is another subgenre, I guess, which is more manga,
Thank you.
manga than anime. Well, I don't know if this is where you were going, but yaoi?
Yaoi, yeah.
Yaoi, yeah.
What is that?
And this is geared toward young female otaku, and these are
this is-
romantic stories about young men getting together, which
Yes.
I find fascinating.
No, this is not where I was going, but
Okay, yeah.
that's okay. That's all right.
I find this fascinating because I had no idea that. For one thing, I didn't know there were that many young
But this
female.
is this
female
anime
otaku.
or
And then-
manga?
It's
Like-
mostly manga. I
And
don't
there-
know that there have been.
There are maid bars too that
Yeah.
kind of cater to that.
Yeah, sure. Like you can go in like host bars instead of hostess bars.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. But what were you thinking of? What were you going?
Well, James, you showed me something when we were last at G Fest. There's
what
this
is
whole
this?
he says I found
Okay.
this show and it's
Okay,
like a
here's-
regular adventure show, but
here's where
Go.
this came from. Okay.
Okay.
I used to go to a Book Off, which is this Japanese used bookstore, and I used to find Hobby Japan magazine. And I used to go through it and cut out tear sheets of Japanese toys that I had never seen before. This was really cool. And invariably, there was always a full-page ad for, and I didn't know what this was, but I guess it was a DVD. And it was an illustration, every month, a different illustration of these women in military uniforms with very short skirts and their panties showing. And I'm like in your face.
Wait, this is drawings or live action photos?
This was drawings. This
Okay,
was
okay.
this was a cartoony illustration.
Okay.
I was like, what the hell is this? So eventually I Googled, military
You devil.
military anime with panties, and I got the title
weren't
of
the
this
first.
show. Tommy, do you know this show?
No idea.
Oh, stop. Stop.
Well, the show.
Mr. Poker Face.
Hey, I've never heard of this
Is it
either.
always specifically military uniforms?
It's a free society. There's a fetish for everyone. Well,
Sure, yeah.
More power to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess what they call it is fan service when they throw the otaku boys a bone by saying, okay, look up, you can look up this girl's skirt. The title is Agent Aika. It's from 1997, and it was an anime, ran for 2 years. And
Two glorious years.
But they're cartoons.
they're cartoons.
They're not real
I
girls.
swear to God, every other shot, it's sort of a dystopian future where there was a
Where there's
big-
no panties?
There's only panties. They
You just see them a lot. Yeah.
There's this young woman who runs a salvage operation, and there's this warlord who's her arch enemy. So he's got these sexy girls working for him, and she's got this platoon of sexy girls. But they fight, and every other shot, I swear to God, you're looking up panties. And am I right? Aaron?
Yes. But you know what? Watching this show, there is a brilliance to it, which is that how many different scenarios and ways they can justify, oh, we're looking at her panties.
Is Neptina in the cast?
There was a fight where everybody gets killed, and at the end, all these girls are lying dead, spread eagled, and their asses up, and I just thought, okay, I buy it.
Can I borrow this DVD?
All right.
Honestly,
you big perverts here.
But it's so bizarre,
on.
though.
I think this
It
is.
is,
I
it
think
is.
this is something that needs a statistical analyst to look at this. 'Cause,
Sure.
when you
I think we all need an analyst.
when you flip a coin, how many times is it going to come up tails up? I mean, seriously.
In this
What
world,
are the odds of what are the odds of that?
in this universe.
I mean, I've heard of upskirt thing.
Yeah,
So it's like
Look, when it's a guy with a tow mirror on the bus, that's not cool.
right.
But I think it should be across the board. Like you were talking about this manga or anime for girls where guys hook up.
Right.
There should be a version of whatever for anybody.
sure.
You know, why not?
I'm sure
not really
there's-
into the whole tentacle thing myself.
Though
that's
Now, if it were sausage,
now-
something meat based.
now there was a lot of comments about that with the last James Bond movie.
Okay, I have no
I
idea.
have not seen it, so tell
wait,
me.
you haven't seen Spectre yet?
No.
Okay.
I didn't.
Well-
I kind of got bored with those movies.
Wait,
No,
when
Spectre
in
was
Spectre
cool.
was there
Yeah,
a,
Spectre wasn't bad.
Okay.
It wasn't quite up to the heights of Skyfall, but it was good.
I
Yeah.
don't remember tentacles in Spectre.
Yeah, what do you?
But yeah, tell me about the
opening titles.
Oh,
Yeah.
like the,
Remember the logo of
I'm curious now.
of
Okay.
Spectre.
Yeah.
So there was
How about Octopussy?
There was a well, here they were trying to flip it around, which was
Right.
instead of just having women's bodies only on the screen all the time, they decided to have
tentacles.
Daniel Craig's, masculine worked out body on screen with tentacles going around it.
Wow. Well,
I didn't
why
think
not?
about
Why
that.
not?
Yeah.
Why not?
And
Yeah.
so what I thought was
Was it good? Was it cool?
Well, the rest of the movie, besides the opening titles.
Okay.
But I thought what was interesting was, in some of the online comments about the movie when it came out, somebody made the offhand comment, "Oh, well, I guess James Bond discovered hentai."
Wow, that's great.
That I'd like to see.
Well, this is great.
All right. Okay. He's just burst into a cold sweat. So where do you want to go,
All
Larry?
right, back to Disney, Larry.
Well,
there you go. Where do you want to go?
It's funny. You
Right,
guys.
so none of us are going to be elected president, right?
You are the president.
Grab him by the tentacles.
Speaking of tentacle,
I'll bet you that's not a transition.
And no, if you ask, I have no idea where that originated from.
okay, that's great.
Oh wait, no, I do. No, I do.
Oh, my diary.
Oh, it's the old classical painting, the Fisherman's Wife and the Sea Creature. But
Okay.
anyway,
I have to look that one
I'll
up.
leave it at that. Look
All
it
right.
up.
No, we'll find it.
It actually,
Okay.
it actually.
All right.
comes
Well,
from
speaking of
antiquity.
creatures, one of the wonderful things about all that. Thank you, Sean, for bringing up the adult content. Yeah, that was
hey.
great.
Thank you.
Trying to expand the.
No, it's
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
part of it.
Yeah, okay, that's great. That's great about a lot of this anime stuff. There's so many things that are like fantasy related, science fiction related, and a lot of this stuff. It's so original. It's so unique. And there's this very talented, capable filmmaker who's made a slew of these anime films, and that's Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he did this one film. Well, he did a bunch, but My Neighbor Totoro, which is
Love it.
It's so great. And it's funny. I was trying to think. Well, how do you explain these things? Sometimes it's hard to explain them in just a sentence. You kind of have to go through several sentences to explain it. But there's this giant cat-like creature that's in it that has become really popular in pop culture. I mean, you see this stuffed cat everywhere. But he did this film, My Neighbor Totoro, that was really popular, and went on to do other films. And there's this one that was so great it actually won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film, and that's from 2001, Spirited Away. And
I love that movie.
the funny thing,
Yeah, me too.
The funny thing about Spirited Away, it's got a lot of I want to say like scary stuff in it. This film, when my daughter, I remember I had a bunch of these anime films that we would try to watch together. She could not at age 5. I thought, hey, this would be perfect for her. She could not watch Spirited Away because when she got to the point where this main character's parents turn into giant pigs, it terrified her. And
Yeah.
she had
That's scary.
Yeah.
And she had to stop. And there's a lot of strange, spooky, witchcraft type stuff in this.
The kami spirits from Shinto folklore, and so
It's also beautiful though.
yeah, no, it's great, and just the sheer imagination of all these different entities that inhabit this world.
Yeah. What's the character like with the big kind of white face, or looks like a mask, and it's a dark shawl, like it's kind of
I
floating?
think in the American version, it's no face.
Okay, yeah.
Konashi in
Okay.
Japanese version.
Yeah, it's
but
really
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that character. Just the imagery.
Yeah.
In that entire film, the different entities. I love that one, and there's so many of them in that film too.
Yes.
That is one of my favorites.
It is. It's a striking film. It really stuck with me.
It struck a lot of people. Again, like I had mentioned, John Lasseter, who was a huge fan, convinced Disney that we should take these films. We should be the one, the distributor of these, in which Disney was. Which is, I mean, a lot of the DVDs I got are Disney copies.
Right.
And Spirited Away, it's just amazing and very creative and well deserved for the Academy Award.
But before that film,
yeah.
earlier in Miyazaki's career, the one that I really love, and maybe you can help me, Tommy, with the pronunciation of this, Nausicaa?
Nausicaa. Yeah.
Nausicaa.
Yeah.
Of the Valley of the Wind.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah,
That one is incredible.
I've not seen this, but I've read about this, and it looks.
It's incredible. And it's, after this apocalyptic war, and it turns this one area of this sort of fantasy realm into like this poisoned forest where there are these giant insects and there are these things that look like these big multi-eyed caterpillar things. And I don't want to get too far into the story, but it does involve this girl who becomes sort of the savior of this world through a series of actions. And there's, lots of themes of conservation and, respect for nature and respect for animals. But it's just done so beautifully. The design work is incredible.
This
And
was like the
these-
80s, right? Like late.
That's
80s?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And 1984, actually. And it's terrific. I love these caterpillar things. They call them ohms, and they have kind of a trilobite sort of look to them, but with a bunch of eyes.
Wow.
And if you have an opportunity to see it, I don't know if it's streaming someplace right now where you can get it readily available, but find it, rent it, buy it. I think you'll be more than pleased.
Cool.
If you want a longer form story, I highly recommend the manga. It went on for years.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. In fact, it's presented almost as a mystery, is why there was this war before their time, why the Earth's ecology was ruined. And so what had happened was the entire atmosphere of the Earth was decimated to the point where the only beings left that could breathe it were the insects. And the entire atmosphere had become poisonous to humans. And so humans are living in these little tiny islands, and the scarcest resource is clean air.
Wow, that's cool. Now, were manga, are they typically very long running?
There are some that, last for what you would call a season's worth of manga, like a year's worth. And then there's some like Nausicaa runs for years. Akira ran for many years.
How about Porco Rosso?
Porco Rosso, oh, that's great.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is that one?
That's a pilot who, through a strange curse, is turned into a pig. Miyazaki must love this,
Loves
turning
pigs.
people into pigs.
Pigs, yeah.
But it's a great. He's a World War I Italian ex-fighter ace, and now he's this bounty hunter, and it's just a rollicking adventure. It's beautiful.
Wow.
I mean, the imagery in that is
Yeah.
great. Like when he's flying with all the ghosts of the flyers around him.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Another great movie.
Another subgenre of anime I've always been kind of impressed that was produced. I'm not personally that familiar with any of them, but they're sports anime. Like I've seen illustrations for vintage baseball anime series. There was a women's volleyball anime series. And I was like, why? And then I read it was because the Japanese women's volleyball team did really well in the Olympics. So then they decided back in like 1969 or something to produce. But there's like Tiger Mask, there's wrestling, there's a very popular football one.
Well, the big one is Slam Dunk, the basketball one.
I never even heard of that.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
And so
What's basketball?
Basketball? It's this sport where you play hoops.
Okay. Does it involve women on pillows? Because
No, the women
right.
can play basketball.
how about tentacles?
Okay.
I would think that would help in basketball.
I have not
Thanks,
seen tentacles
James.
in a.
Thanks, James, for steering it back to all that area.
He brought up sports.
I wanted to get
Yeah,
back
that was
to
the sport. Yeah, that was the cleanest question you asked all night.
I wanted to get back to Miyazaki,
I just find
please.
it very interesting that
Yeah.
they can go on for years with these stories
Yeah.
just about sports teams and
Yeah.
the competitions and the relationships within the teams. It's like, wow, there must be a lot there that I've just never even been exposed to.
So, Larry, is there a Miyazaki film or two that
There is
that you wanted to talk
one
about?
of my favorites that I loved watching with my daughter, and that was Ponyo. Ponyo, little fish in the sea.
Ponyo.
It's so great. This is a wonderful, wonderful.
I have not
anime.
seen that one.
What year is this one?
This is from actually 2008.
Oh, okay.
And talk about you're just not sure where this is going to go. What kind of world is created? So it kind of follows this little boy who finds this little goldfish in the water. What you learn is this goldfish is a very special goldfish that's like a princess that has all these other little goldfish sisters and stuff. But what happens is when she goes up to the surface, she meets this little boy, and she gets caught in a jar. And he kind of releases her, but cuts his finger, and the little fish like licks his finger, and his finger heals right away. And he's all, oh my gosh, she must be a magical fish. Well, also the blood that she ingested from licking, it turns her into a human. And so they start off this little adventure together, and it's just so great. And the funny thing is, not only is she like a princess, but she has these very special powers, and the whole world has gone out of balance. And it's very much like a Little Mermaid in a way, but it's very different. It's kind of based loosely on the Hans Christian Andersen story, but it's so great. And what's so cute about this little character Ponyo is, when she turns to a human, she's like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and she has all the energy of a little kid, and she's so excited to be a human. And she's excited by the most mundane, regular things like ramen. Oh my gosh, ramen! And here's a little piece of ham. Oh, I love ham! And she's
like Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's loads of fun, and it's magical. It's beautiful, and I love it.
I'm sure it's great because I have not seen anything by him that I
Miyazaki.
didn't at least like.
Right.
Is he still active or did he retire? Or
After Miyazaki had worked on The Wind Rises, he had announced that he was retiring from the business. But lo and behold, he announced a few years later that he was working on one more film, and it's called How Do You Live?
How do you live?
I'm sure he's asking himself that.
I have no idea what the content of this film is, so I'm looking forward to it when it comes
Interesting.
out.
No, that's really cool though. I mean, his work is just it's beautiful, it's creative, it's innovative, it's such great stuff. And I was going to say to listeners, if you're not familiar with anime, you think, well, maybe I'll check out some of these things. Check out some of these films that he did.
Right.
And one of Miyazaki's earliest features was the Castle of Cagliostro,
Oh, yeah.
Love that movie.
featuring Lupin the Third, one of my favorite animes, and Matt's as well.
Oh my God. I am a freak for that show. And not only that, but I don't go crazy for the soundtracks too often.
No.
But for that show,
It's different.
I love everything.
It's
Yuji
jazzy.
Ono.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to Japan so we can see Yuji Ono play live. But yeah, he's done like, I don't know how many versions of that Lupin the Third
So
theme.
Many different variations of the series, too. They keep bringing it back.
Yeah.
And what is? I mean, I know you've talked about this before. I have not seen this. What is the basic premise of this?
So Lupin the Third is the grandson of Arsène Lupin, who was this gentleman thief in a series of novels by Maurice Leblanc. And Lupin the Third is this wisecracking, silly thief. But he's also really smart, too. He's this really wonderful thief who manages to get away with almost every caper he attempts.
Right.
And he's got this whole team of partners, and some are a little bit more informal than others. One of them is this bombshell, Fujiko, who is his love interest, his paramour, and he's always lusting after her. And she's this femme fatale who tempts everybody around her, but rarely does anything about it.
Right.
And Lupin also has a friend who is this gun expert, Jigen. And anything that has to do with a gun, he can do it. He could shoot something from, miles away. And then on top of that, you've got a samurai, Gomen. And Gomen has this sword that can cut through anything. Like, he can cut through a car. And that often happens in episodes. And it's really fun. And there's a nice kind of lighthearted James Bond feel to it, mixed with a little bit of the Pink Panther.
Yeah. There's an inspector, Zenigata, who makes it his life's work to catch Lupin.
And he's sort of the Clouseau of the series.
Exactly. And plus, there's a lot of travel. They go to all these different cities in Europe. And
Every episode is in a different city or a different country.
And this is a pretty long-running series.
Very
Well, it was a
long-running,
series. They've done a series of movies, and the movies have never stopped. I mean, since this thing started, which I believe was in the 70s, that franchise just keeps going and going and going. And it was created by Monkey Punch.
Monkey Punch, yeah. There were a couple of live-action movies. The earlier one, which I guess was in the 80s, not very good, but there was a more recent one that really kind of did it justice that I liked.
I did not really like it, but I will give it this, is that they at least captured the feel of the characters a little bit better.
The guy they cast as Lupin was pretty good.
He was good,
Yeah.
and I even liked Gomen, I thought was good. I thought that they really botched it with Fujiko.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one.
Yeah.
But I would like them to keep trying because it does seem like it would be perfect for a live action film. I'd even like to see an American or a Western company do it, but with Asian actors.
Live action versions of anime are hit and miss. Usually they don't do that well. There was a recent live action Gatchaman. Not
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Really?
they now they can do CG effects and they can kind of emulate it the way it should be.
Right.
Tommy, did you see the live action Gatchaman?
No, I did not.
There was also the Ghost in the Shell.
Right.
Remember, there was a big
Yeah.
controversy
I saw
about
that.
that. too.
I saw it.
It was not terrible, but
Design-wise, it's
design-wise,
gorgeous,
it
beautiful,
just-
but just
yeah.
it's kind of dull.
yeah, it was okay. Wasn't that? It
They
didn't
tried,
really
not that
stick-
great.
They tried doing Golgo 13, which is this manga and anime about an assassin, like a professional assassin.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Ken Takakura did them once, and I didn't Sonny Chiba do them, maybe? Anyway, they're okay.
It seems like to date, the one that has done best at the box office is Battle Angel Alita.
Yeah.
And that was with James Cameron behind it.
Oh yeah, was that good?
It was actually pretty good.
I was kind of. I don't know.
I mean,
the trailer. No.
So people were taken aback by the trailer, and this is a problem that happens with marketing all the time.
Right.
Is the marketing department will just say, "Hey, we need to get knowledge out about this movie
Right.
as soon as possible," and the most difficult time they had was with the CG of the character.
Now, was it partial CGI? Was it all CGI?
No, it was full motion capture. So it was almost they had the actress and they had a 3D model of her that looked like her, but they had the gigantic eyes, and the film had a good explanation of why her eyes were so big.
Really?
Anime eyes in real life.
Oh yeah, okay.
And they had her covered in a motion capture suit with motion capture dots all over her face, and they had to rebuild her on camera. Basically replace her.
Right.
And the CG just wasn't done. And so what you saw, it was squarely in the uncanny valley.
What do you mean that CGI wasn't done?
So what happened was the model was done. It mostly was there, but just something about the motion and the texture of the skin. Everybody said, "Oh, that looks like one of those almost real Japanese dolls that try to meet you and
right,
greet you or whatever."
Right.
And something's off.
Keep talking.
And but in the final film, it seemed like they crossed that bridge. It looked great. The storytelling was great. It was.
Did it do well? Did it do well?
Yeah, it was Robert Rodriguez. I would say they dodged a bullet. It was a very, very expensive movie, but it made its money back. But I think the audience really seemed to like it. So
Okay. I'll give it a shot.
I hope
Yeah.
they make another one.
Right.
Hey,
okay.
you know who I think would be a great Lupin the Third?
Who?
Is Stephen Chow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is getting into Chinese cinema, but like Kung Fu Hustle and Shaolin Soccer.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
seen those, right?
Shaolin Soccer, I love.
No, sorry.
You've never seen those?
No.
Those are awesome.
Oh, Larry, you would love them. They're
I know. I'm
hilarious.
missing out.
They're
All right,
great.
You need a Stephen Chow night. Add God
Yes, you do.
Add God of Cookery
He's
to
so
that.
great. He's so charismatic.
Yeah.
And I also learned something about his films too. That I guess there's a Cantonese wordplay that he does that we don't even catch unless you know Cantonese. But yeah, I think he is such a talent. And I guess he doesn't do that much acting anymore. He's mostly directing. But he's got quite a film library. You can go back, all through, I think, like the 80s. Yeah, he has a lot of great films. Yeah, we got to do that. Let's do the Stephen Chow night.
All right, well, we'll do that. It's funny you should mention that. Us getting together, hanging together, watching some anime together.
Yes.
Maybe
Watching some hentai together.
Yeah.
it's no. It's
Is
funny.
that your tentacle?
Yes, it is. The one thing that I haven't mentioned exactly is my wonderful daughter Kathy. She is a huge anime fan. In fact, when I told her I was doing this show, she was upset that she couldn't be here tonight.
We'll have her for the next one.
And she says, "So who's your guest?" And I mentioned. She goes, "Who's he?" And I was like, "Well,
He is the president.
That's what I said. That's what I said. But she said, "You got to talk about this." And I go, whoa, slow down. My daughter has told my wife and I about some great anime. So we had a little viewing party ourselves, and we watched this one, which came out in 2006, and I didn't know about it. And my wife and I were so hooked on it. And this is called Death Note. Do you guys know about
love
Death
that.
Note?
I've heard about that.
And the manga is terrific.
Now, so Death Note is based on this manga, this comic series, and it is just terrific. So for listeners, what is this Death Note? Imagine, if you will, that in our world, it's like people are going their busy lives, and all of a sudden, you have a heart attack and you drop down dead, or you get really old and I'm old and you drop down dead. There are these demons or spirit like
Shinigamis.
these shinigamis that are walking around, and they know when you're gonna die. It's like you walk around with like a little date on your head,
And
kind of
that's
a
their
thing.
job,
That is their
really. Yeah.
job, and they carry this little book with them, and so they have to write down your name. When you die. Well, one of these Shinigami guys loses his book.
Or does he lose it?
That's the question. Yes, that's true. Or is it because he mentions about sometimes he gets bored because he's been doing this for
Millennia,
generations and generations. So this very intelligent, sharp kid, brilliant kid,
Light Yagami.
finds this book called Death Note. What is this? And basically, it's if you write somebody's name down in this Death Note book, but you have to know who need to know what the person looks like.
Yes.
You write their name down. Within like 45 seconds, they will immediately die of a heart attack. Or what you could do is in the book, you could write,
How they die.
SHAWN SHERIDAN will die on the 3rd in tragic car accident, and then Sean will, I don't want that to happen.
Don't write it in the book. Put the book down.
No. So
He's had enough trouble.
But so this brilliant kid finds this book, and just by going through a series of experiments, learns about this magic book. And this, when you pick up the book, this demon will appear to you.
Yeah.
And you can ask him questions. He'll answer questions. Then he realizes, he goes, you know what? I could probably do a lot of good. I could get rid of some really horrible people. And on the surface, it sounds like, that sounds like, a good idea. Then
Probably are a lot of people would be better off if they weren't alive.
Maybe some other competing podcasts or something, I'm just kidding.
That took a dark turn.
But see, that's
Give me that death note.
No. But that's just it. The thing that starts out is you start to expand. He starts to get carried away, and it's like there are people that learn about how are these people dying, and they're trying to find out what's causing this. So you have good people trying to solve the problem or solve this mystery, and then it's like, oh my gosh, they're getting close to me. Then you find that you're killing good people too. It's like, where does it end? And this light Yagami kind of gets carried away thinking, I'm like a god, And what's great is you wonder, so is it just follow him? No. What's great is his father, who is the captain of the police force. He's trying to solve this, and it's just driving him crazy. And he can see his dad going. It's like it hurts me just to see this guy trying to beat his head against the wall. How is this happening? And then there's this other brilliant guy who's brought in to kind of help solve the
enigmatic
mystery.
Detective.
Yes, and what's so great is it goes on for about 30-something episodes, and there's this cat and mouse thing about the brilliant guy who's trying to solve this mystery.
Is it done seriously? Or is
Yes.
it comedic? Or
no.
But there is comedy in it.
Yes.
But the overall story is done very seriously, and some of the characters can come off a little comic, but it all fits within that world.
And it's so
and
great.
L, who is the detective who's on Light's trail,
Yes.
he is brilliant.
Just
and
brilliant.
the way that they write this thing, the way it's written by Sugumi Oba, the storytelling really puts you into this place of this cat and mouse game.
And the funny thing is, on one hand, you want Light Yagami to succeed. What he's doing is kind of good, but then he gets carried away. You go, whoa, wait a minute.
Whoa, you're going too far.
Yeah, and it's great. And I don't want to say where it ends, but it goes to a place where I didn't know where it was going to go, and it's just terrific. And so I want to thank my daughter. My wife and I were so addicted to it.
It's a manga. It's an anime. There's a live-action Japanese series of films.
There's a musical.
series of films?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's a horrible Netflix movie.
Really?
That's
Terrible.
a movie, but
Terrible. But
can't.
don't watch that.
No, you can watch the anime on Netflix.
Is there Escapades version of it?
No. But one interesting thing I wanted to say, Matt, did you know that it was banned? It was banned in some places. I found a thing. There's
China?
In China, yeah,
China,
because kids were making their own little Death Note books.
Yeah,
And of course,
well,
nothing
good luck getting it to work.
Well,
Yeah,
that's just
there was the controversy of kids putting in the names of teachers they didn't like.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But the kids would do that anyway.
Yeah, you don't need a show to teach you how to do that. But I mean, it's so good and it's so well written. The
Yeah. I
artwork
got you
is
down.
wonderful, and the character of the Shinigami Rook
He
is so great because once Light gets the Death Note, this Shinigami is around all the time, sitting there, and it's kind of like his pal.
Yeah, but he's hideous looking. He's
hideous looking, but
grotesque and huge,
And only Light can see him.
Okay.
And their relationship is just wonderful.
It
It's
is.
almost like the Odd Couple kind of.
it is. So
It's so good.
if you-
And then there are more characters that are
Yeah.
introduced, and you just have to see it.
So my daughter was thrilled, as you can see. She has her own little Death Note book, which I'm happy to say.
Your name's not in it.
My dad will die at the age of 180. Peacefully in his sleep.
Wow, only 180, huh? You're like at 180, you're like, finally.
Now I love Death Note. My wife loves Death Note, but my daughter wanted to make sure that I mentioned a few of her favorites.
Sure, go ahead.
One is called The Promised Neverland.
I don't know this one.
See, neither do I. Do you know this one? The Promised Neverland.
haven't seen-
Netherland.
So
Neverland.
What's interesting? It's about these kids that they're in this orphanage and they're living happy lives until one day there's this terrible secret that's revealed, and what they don't realize is who's running the orphanage. It's actually demons.
Oh, sounds
And
great.
the
always
orphanage
demons.
kids are being raised these kids are being raised in the orphanage by demons to be eaten.
Wow.
And I figured, Matt, this is right up your alley.
Sure.
And
There's actually a great Doctor Who
Yeah.
episode with
yeah.
Tennant.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
and she says that this anime is really scary. And it's funny because all these seem to be really dark and scary. That's what my daughter.
I love your daughter.
The other
More
one,
power to her.
The other one is called Black Butler. This is from 2008. Do you guys know this one? So this little boy's kidnapped by this evil cult, and when he figures that there's no God and no God's gonna save him, he makes a contract with the demon to get him out.
A demon again.
Yes, and. Yeah, and so the demon pretends to be this little kid's butler, and he gets revenge on the cult that's kidnapped him. So
That's cool.
So again, another great thing with demons. You see like an ongoing theme.
I love demons.
And then the one thing I think Sean will like, because my daughter has told me about this. We were going to start watching this. This is Junji Ito. And this came out, this is recent, 2018. And basically it's a collection of anime horror stories. And the artwork is really beautiful, and she really recommends it. So it's like, it's an anthology. It's like different story.
Yeah.
And she was telling me some of them, they're really, really creepy. So there are 3 of my daughter Kathy's picks
Cool.
of
How
anime.
about, does she know Tokyo Ghoul?
I told her write down 3 because
Okay.
she had a list of like 30.
Because that's another one where there are creatures that look like
Demons?
normal people, but they eat human flesh.
I'll bring her on for volume 2.
Can I quickly recommend 3 favorites of mine?
Go for it.
One of them, I actually recommend the manga a little bit more than the anime. It's called Genshiken, and it's from 2002 to 2006 by a writer named Shimoku Kiyo. And it's about these college kids who form a club called Genshiken, the Society for the Preservation of Visual Culture. But they're just into anime, and they just want to, go to Akihabara and spend too much money on figures and pillows. And it's an ensemble story, but the prime character is this young, kind of a shy student. And he eventually, after a couple of years, becomes the president of the club. And then after he graduates, he actually starts a career as a manga artist. So it's sort of in real time, and you sort of follow these characters, and some of them are really goofy, but it's none of it is fantastical. It's all true, kind of grounded in reality.
No demons?
No demons, no. But it's a lot of fun, and I actually ended up getting kind of invested in these characters. And there was one year when a bunch of them graduated, and I wasn't even ready for that. And then he ends the story by saying these characters graduated. I'm like, oh my God, I am actually going to miss these guys. And then it was turned into a very faithful anime, which I also recommend. Again, it's called Genshiken.
Okay.
Genshiken. Another one was not based on a manga, I don't think. And this is a mini series from 2009 called Tokyo Magnitude 8.0.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about a young brother and sister who are on a field trip in Odaiba, right outside Tokyo, when a magnitude 8 earthquake strikes and decimates the city. And they have to get back home across Tokyo on foot. And there's a lot of aftershocks. And one of them is so big that it topples Tokyo Tower.
Wow.
And they have to rely on the kindness of a lot of different people that they run into along the way. And of course, they run into a lot of carnage and tragedy from what's happened. And toward the end, I won't spoil it, but something happens that's so sad. And it actually sort of becomes a ghost story along the lines of Ugetsu. And it really, that impacted me too. It was one of the saddest things I'd ever seen. Unbelievable. Again, that's Tokyo Magnitude 8.0.
Sounds great.
And then finally, Tatsumi from 2011, which was produced in Singapore. And it's about a manga artist named Yoshihiro Tatsumi who had grown up right in post-war Japan and was very, very scarred by a lot of what he observed. And his manga stories reflected that. Again, none of this is fantastical. It's all pretty much grounded in life. But his stories took on a kind of a haiku because they were just kind of slice of life. Most of them featured kind of disturbed characters, having depressing lives. And, it's not for every taste necessarily, but Tatsumi, the film, illustrates his stories very faithfully to his style of art. Many of them were black and white, which most of his publications were. And it's something worth checking out. So those are my 3 recommendations.
Have you seen Parasite? And this is a manga. They did some live action films, and they also did an anime series. And Parasite is by Hitoshi Iwaki. and it concerns this kid and these worm-like aliens who are taking over the Earth by infiltrating human beings and taking over their minds. Well, this one tries to get to him, but he wakes up while it's happening, and so the alien only is able to take over his arm. And so the alien is just part of his arm now, and it can do all these things, like it can make his skin morph and do all these things, like his fingers grow eyeballs. And it's really cool, but because the alien has only taken over the arm, he's unable to take over the rest of him. It's like he's stopped in his tracks. And so the alien kind of becomes an ally of sorts to this kid in their quest to defeat the rest of these aliens.
Cool.
And it's really cool. And there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of imagery that you would say, oh my God, that could be in a Thing sequel. Like there's a lot of that kind of faces opening up into teeth and a lot of really gorgeous, beautiful, horrible things.
Cool.
And that's a great one. Yeah, and I've liked every incarnation of that as well. The manga and the anime and the live action stuff is pretty good too. Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
I think Guillermo del Toro should adapt that.
Yeah.
Tommy, is there a couple is there a favorite of yours?
Let's see. I already mentioned a few of my. Okay, here's one guilty pleasure because it is a throwback. Is Giant Robo.
Giant Robo.
Remember the old black and white series in the 60s called Giant Robot? And
Was
it's
it-
one
was
of
it
those.
black and white, or
It was
was it-
black and white, and nobody has any idea who owns the rights to that.
Not Johnny Sacco.
There's Johnny
Sacco,
but that's color.
It started in black and white, and then it went to color.
Did it really?
Yeah.
There are black and white episodes?
Yeah, the early
my
one.
God.
Was
James?
it an anime first or was it
No,
live
it was
action?
live action.
Live action.
Okay.
So it
No,
was
I know the
very,
live
very.
action
It was
show, yeah.
a long time ago. Live action. Johnny Sacco and his giant
Yes.
robot.
Yeah, love that.
And when it was adapted, instead of Johnny, they had Daisaku. They went to the original Japanese names, and because they weren't sure where the rights of the name was, they called it Giant Robo.
Right.
But it was the same. It was
Yeah,
the same
I
robot
love
with
it.
the
Yeah, yeah,
Egyptian
yeah.
head.
Yes.
Yeah, figure
Except here it was like crazy animation budget, and they were trying to make it look like 60s anime.
Oh,
So
cool.
it had this kind of pseudo Astro Boy style, but with just really good budget, really good modern animation techniques. It's just incredible.
Wow, cool. I got you.
I remember that.
checking
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Of course, we've talked in the past about Kitaro.
Oh, yeah.
You introduced me to that. That
Shigeru
is
Mitsuki
so cool.
created this character, sort of took it over from an earlier. There was an earlier series that was done in a manga book where Kitaro was a little more horrific. And when he took it over, he made him a little bit more of a champion of humanity. And, Kitaro is basically an orphan, kind of an orphan boy of these two ghost spirit creatures. And his birth process is he comes out of a grave in the cemetery and manages to poke his eye out on a tombstone. And then the spirit of his dead father is reincarnated as an eye, who then lives in the socket of his eye and is sort of like his Jiminy Cricket, his protector, and guides him.
so weird.
It's so strange. And then there's a lot of yokai characters that inhabit his world that he's friends with. There's a rat man who's like this horrible, smelly, greedy character who is almost a villain in a lot of ways. And then there's a cat girl who looks like a cute little girl, but all of a sudden her face will open up into all these teeth and she'll eat a fish. It's great. It's wonderful. And it's been going for ages.
decades,
And it's very popular in Japan. And especially if you like yokai, there's a lot of wonderful stuff in that one too.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for more horror stuff, Devilman by Go Nagai. That's another one where it's this timid kid who meets this friend of his that he hadn't seen for a while, who has discovered that, there's this other realm of demons that are trying to take over the world again. And the only way to fight them is to merge with a demon. And because this kid has a pure heart, he would be able to withstand merging with a demon and not have his entire soul taken over. And so he does this, and whenever danger appears, he becomes this half man, half demon, Devil Man. And it's great. And there's a lot of wonderful, kooky characters in there, too. There's a harpy woman who was the girlfriend of the demon that takes him over. And she's like half bird, half human. She's of course, got wonderful breasts and these giant bird wings that stick out of her head. And so, it's the typical stuff that you're looking for out of good anime. But I mean, there's so many of them.
There's so many.
I mean, we haven't even talked about like Dragon Ball
No, we haven't,
or
no.
Pokemon.
No.
Well, like Digimon, Pokemon, Sailor Moon. There's so much. And when I was looking through, just kind of
Mazinger.
to bring
Oh
my,
yeah, also by
just
Gonagai.
tons.
I mean, the one thing you can say is that there's so much that we're just going to have to do another volume down the road.
I mean, Yurusei Yatsura? God, I love that. Lum. Yeah. I mean, which almost could be a sitcom now. Before we wind up, I got to give you a little bit of this because it's one of the few of these series that was actually created by a woman.
Yep.
And it's about this alien race, again, an alien race taking over the Earth. And instead of just outright doing it, they decide they're going to do a challenge. There's a champion for Earth, and if this champion can touch the little horns on the princess of the alien's head within a certain amount of time, that means that the Earth is saved. And the princess is this beautiful alien girl named Lum. And she wears like this kind of a tiger skin bikini, and she has green hair, and she's hot and lovely and wonderful. Also very temperamental. And if she gets mad, she'll zap you with electricity. So the champion that they pick is this lecherous, unscrupulous little horn dog. And he manages to touch her horns by pulling off her bikini top. So she tries to cover herself up. He grabs the horns, and through a series of circumstances, she now interprets that as now they're married.
Sounds like an anime Benny Hill.
Yeah. But it's great. It's really funny and a great cast. And it's always a growing cast. They introduce more and more characters. And genuinely amusing, and I think you would. This is one I think you would like, Larry. It's really lighthearted fun.
You lent me the DVD, Matt, and I remember watching one episode after another. And it was really fun and easy to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
delightful.
Yeah.
I think we also need to just briefly talk about, because people will kill us if we don't, Attack on Titan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that thing is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And most people know the story of this, but if you don't, it's this village, city, community that is walled in with 3 separate walls to keep out these strange giants.
We don't know when this is.
When
or
it
was.
is.
We don't know.
Yeah, it's just like you're dropped in the middle of this story. And as the story progresses, you find out more and more details about who the giants are, where they came from, who built the walls. And the thing that really brings me to the series, there's some great characterization in the show, but the giants are so creepy.
Oh, yes.
And there's one main giant that you see quite often that looks like a skinned man.
Yeah.
And it's just like a guy where you can see all his muscles and everything. And that's okay. But the other giants, I think, are spookier.
Yeah.
These giants that have these strange, almost happy-looking faces.
Grinning faces.
Like imagine a bunch of senile old people
Yes.
on a rampage.
Yeah, and so it's like, what do these giants do when they get to this wall?
Yeah.
They break down this wall.
But there's another wall, and
Yeah.
so everyone has to retreat.
Yeah, but it's like what their point is to grab all the humans
And eat them.
And at first you think, well, they don't actually show it. Yes.
Oh, yeah, they eat them.
do.
They eat them.
The
And
first, Matt, I saw this,
Yeah.
I flipped out. What? I
Yeah.
did not expect.
it's so creepy and great.
Yeah.
And I love the show. And they did a live action.
I was gonna say, they did live action?
2 movies.
Yeah, I
the
haven't seen
first
those.
one I thought was really pretty good. The second one is terrible.
Really?
Yeah, but the first one, how they did in a live action scenario, the eating effects
Yes.
is wonderful.
Yeah.
Just for that, watch 20 minutes
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
And
But-
he went on to do Shin Godzilla.
Yeah. Which was
well,
one
that's
of my.
Oh.
Shin Godzilla is.
No, that's Hideaki Anno.
yeah.
If you've watched Evangelion, when you watch Evangelion all the way to the end, and you watch the remade end of Evangelion, you'll see where his mindset is. He
Yes.
likes to go all out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's still one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time. But
Yeah,
we'll
when
argue about that later.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, what?
Okay. Any more before we wrap this thing up? I know we barely talked about Robotech.
Yes.
So give us, I know that Robotech is 3 different series, Japanese series, that they then turned into this show, Robotech. But how exactly did that happen?
Okay, so if you don't mind a little bit of a history lesson
Sure.
on that, Tatsunoko Production, the famous studio that produced a lot of these great series like Speed Racer, Battle of the Planets, the founder of the studio, Tatsuo Yoshida, created most of their wrote most of their content, but what had happened in the late 70s, he got cancer and he had passed away. And so you had this fantastic studio without its original creator, and they started bringing in outside talent to develop the content there. And one of them was Artland, led by Noboru Ishiguro. He had previously worked on Space Cruiser Yamato for Leiji Matsumoto. And so he teamed up with this talented young designer, Shoji Kawamori. He was barely out of school. And he had developed this amazing work with Kazutaka Miyatake. They had created this incredible transforming robots. And this was before Transformers came out in the United States.
Yeah.
This was back in 1982.
Okay.
And they were talking about how when they were developing this, it was almost magical how this was happening. And this was this incredible series that was originally supposed to be 52 episodes, and then the broadcast station wasn't sure. They only ordered 26 episodes, and then it was such a breakout hit. Right before the final episode was supposed to air, they said, can we get 10 more episodes of this? And they were like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of explains the tacked on additional episodes at the end. And then at the same time, another really talented team. This was Artmech, and they had a really talented gentleman there, Shinji Aramaki. He had co-created Maspida. And he's also well known right now because he's currently the new series of Ultraman that's running on Netflix.
Is that right? Oh,
That is
okay.
from him.
Oh,
Shinji
wow,
Aramaki.
okay.
So he's done some incredible stuff. Like he did the animated Starship Troopers.
Okay.
And he also did recent iterations of Appleseed.
Appleseed. Okay.
Yeah, so one of
heard
the
of
newer
that one,
versions.
yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of the anime directors who's adopting CG production methods into
Okay.
the animation pipeline. So he's got incredible technical know-how. So you've got these incredible creators creating these amazing series, but they were only 23 to 36 episodes long. And so for the US back then, when they were syndicating stuff from Japan, those individual series were too short. And so a young producer by the name of Carl Masick, he watched them. And when he was trying to figure out the storyline to attach them all together, he actually listened to them with the sound turned off. He was trying to imagine how they were going to work together as a series. And the one lucky happenstance was, since all 3 series were produced by the same Japanese animation studio, he thought that he could fulfill the syndication requirements, which was a minimum of 65 episodes, by taking 3 series and rewriting them so they all work together. That's why you have the 3 generations of Robotech.
Right.
And it actually worked. Almost
Yes, it
everybody who
does.
watched it
Yeah.
bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then you had an 85 episode long series, and it became a huge hit. And now Sony Pictures picked up the rights for it, and they're developing the live action film for it. And they've got the writer of Wonder Woman, Jason Fuchs, currently developing the story.
So what is the basic story of Robotech?
So Robotech, it's a near future science fiction where our world is, unstable, superpowers don't like each other. And then,
how about
just like today. And then the world takes notice when a strange giant object just crashes on an island in the middle of the Pacific. And it turns out to be an alien ship, but it just doesn't turn out to be any alien ship. It turns out to be a warship. And just this one warship by itself has enough firepower to destroy the Earth.
Yeah.
And what happens is this sets in motion a ticking clock, in that the scientists of the world have to rebuild a ship before the aliens who owned it come looking for it.
The Zentradi.
The Zentradi, yes, exactly.
Cool.
And as luck would have it, they show up on the day that the ship is supposed to launch.
Of
during
course.
its launch ceremony. Yeah. So yeah, it's one of the shows I grew up with.
It's fun.
When I was in school. Loved it.
Totally fun.
I got to school on time because it aired early in the morning, so I got to bed early to watch
okay.
it, just like you were telling me your stories.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always liked the first season of Robotech, or the first arc of that story, and the third one the best.
Yes.
Especially the first one, the Macross part with Rick Hunter. I love that. But I have to say, I did enjoy the entire thing.
Those 2 series are the first and the third you were talking
Yeah.
about. Those are good examples of anime presentation style, which is throw everything into your first episode because you can blow half your season's budget. just throw the kitchen sink at the audience because if they don't come back for the next episode, then you're canceled.
Yeah.
And so they just went bonkers. They just blew up the earth, killed everybody.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the first episode, you were like, what the heck was that?
Right.
And then you tuned in every episode for the rest of the
I
season.
see.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing now?
That you can
And
talk about.
That you can talk about. And if you can, is there anything you actually can talk about? Is there anything like new material coming
the
that's
anime
Robotech
scene.
related that we can get, that we can buy? That
Oh, yeah. So we've got great Robotech comics. It's being published by Titan Comics, who also happens to have other great properties that you guys love, like Doctor Who.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, Sean and I.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But they've got really great creators working on it. They've got Simon Furman, who also works on Transformers, writing it for us.
Okay.
And Henry Presetia, he's an unbelievable artist. And then we've also got next coming up on the pipeline, we've got Brendan Fletcher, who's one of the few gaijin who's actually gotten to write Ghost in the Shell.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we've got him working on Robotech as well, along with Elmer Damaso, who I had the great fortune and pleasure to work with on Robotech versus Voltron.
Wow. Oh, we didn't even talk about Voltron.
Yeah. So, I mean, look for that. And I mean, Sony's been great to work with. We're just all looking forward to that live action film.
And Robotech and Harmony Gold, you guys are like a juggernaut. I did a little tour with you of the facilities, and God, I love that place. I just want to hang out there in a hammock and just make the outside world go away.
Give us advance notice.
All right. Hey, hear that? Hear that, guys?
Yes.
Party at Harmony Gold.
Awesome.
Well, Tommy, thank you so much for being with us tonight and helping us, guiding us through the whole world of anime. Again, like Matt said,
gotta
there's
get
so
you back
much.
for volume
We'll
2.
we'll
My
have to
God.
have you back for like volume 2 eventually. But
And
of course,
3 and
of course,
4.
my daughter will have to be with us because
Sure.
she's
Why
got
not?
a lot.
She's
that
got
she
good
needs to talk
taste.
about. Yes,
Yeah.
but I just want to raise my glass to
Yeah,
Tommy Yune
Tommy.
and anime.
Time for listener shout out. Shout out.
Here it comes. Here comes the shout out.
Oh, nice. Recently we attended the Son of Monsterpalooza convention.
We did.
Son
Monster
of Monster.
Beautiful
Yes.
Burbank, California.
Our favorite convention.
Where it was
Yes.
wonderful to run into some of our listeners and friends and past guests, such as Jim Moore.
Oh, we love
yes.
Jim Moore.
Of Moore
What a talent.
Amazing creations that he makes.
Yeah, the sculptures and
monsters.
Just,
Yeah, I bought a Tabonga tiki mug
I'm
from
so
him.
jealous.
Awesome.
And past guest Ronnie Angel from our Slash.
Ronnie
That's
Angel.
right.
Johnny Angel.
And Wally
best.
Wingert.
Legendary.
And Sean, you ran into a couple of listeners.
Yes, Monster Party listener Hilal Latif, who
Hey.
actually works at UCLA. My wife works at UCLA, and we've met, and he's awesome.
Nice.
They could get
also-
lunch.
Yeah, I think they have. Yeah, no, he's great. He's a totally cool guy, and we ran into him at the convention. Also, I was walking around with my wife, and this guy accosted me. No,
I'm assuming in a good way.
yeah. Yes, he said, "Are you from Monster Party? Like, we were hoping to find some Monster
And
Party."
you said,
guys
well,
here
it's
at
not
this
really my
convention."
show, it's Matt's.
Yeah, I
But
said, "Oh yes, it's my podcast, Monster Party." Yes. This is Monster Party listener Colin Langendorfer and his girlfriend Charlene. And Colin actually works in TV and movie productions. He's an animal handler. He with like insects and different monsters.
monsters.
Oh yeah, different.
Way to embellish, God.
It's the demon
You didn't
foods.
meet anyone, did you?
Yes, it's all my imagination. No, but
He works
Colin,
with lepuses.
maybe, yeah.
he probably
works
does.
He works
Probably
with different
does.
animals for TV and movies. He's worked on the Carbonaro Effect, which is, you guys know about the show?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's the greatest show ever. It's a hidden camera magic show where this magician does these crazy, ridiculous things for people, and they think it's real. It's fantastic.
Oh, I gotta
But
see
there's
this.
there's also it involves sometimes like animals and
Oh,
weird.
great.
It's great, but he's been an animal wrangler for that show.
Wow.
But it was great just running into him. We were just walking around the aisles, and he said he's a huge fan and listens to the show. He's from Chicago. Yes, it was great. It was just really cool.
It's always a great show. It really is. Every single time we go, in any incarnation,
Yeah.
it's just like being with family.
And,
really
and we
is.
got to meet
In a good way.
We got to meet Linda Blair.
Oh, Linda Blair.
That was awesome.
It was great
Yeah.
because I'd met her before, but this was the first time I had my daughter meet her, and Kathy was just thrilled. She brought along her little living dead Reagan from The Exorcist doll,
yeah.
Nice.
and Linda signed it, Sweet Dreams, Linda Blair on the leg, and
She was great.
Oh, she was terrific,
Let us take a free picture.
Yeah, and it's like one of my daughter's most prized possessions. She has it displayed proudly on her shelf. So
Yeah, that's great.
David Scow, my wife.
Oh,
and I
yeah,
ran into.
David Scow.
We hang out at the bar and
Yeah.
have a drink with him. He's always awesome.
David Weiner, he's always a delight.
Oh, David.
yes. I love David.
Former editor of Famous Monsters
That's
magazine.
right.
Right.
And a hero of mine, Marky Ramone.
Marky
Pretty
Ramone.
awesome.
And Marky Ramone helped right a wrong because way back when I had the album of Pleasant Dreams and I brought it to the Record Factory in San Francisco where the Ramones were doing a signing.
Oh, yeah.
But I was unaware that at that particular point, Marky had left the band. And so I'm going down the line, and there's this new drummer, and he signs my album. And he did not drum on this album. So it took years
Oh, wow.
to finally Monsterpalooza.
Yeah.
And here he is writing this wrong, signs it, writes, hey ho, let's go, signs my rock and roll high school poster, takes a picture with us.
That's awesome.
But I have to say, I was there, Matt, and listening to him tell the story. First of all, he's a tough guy.
He is a tough
and,
guy.
And to hear him talk about with the passion, about that guy didn't, drum
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm
yeah.
listening. I'm going, oh wow, it was great.
Yeah,
It
I
was
brought
great.
up a press conference that he was involved with Johnny Rotten, and he got a little hot, but not at us.
No,
yeah.
about the incident,
Yeah.
and it was great.
It was great. He was wonderful and really took some time with us, and
He talked to us.
yeah, it was lovely. And so yeah, Monsterpalooza, it makes dreams come true.
It really does.
And speaking of dreams coming true, we will have a booth again at the next Monsterpalooza.
Yes, we will.
Dun, 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 dun,
Next
dun.
May. Hopefully you can come out, make your travel plans early. And we look
Book now.
Book now.
Yes.
It's never too early. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yes, the Highland Motel on Sepulveda is always taking people.
But it's going to be in Pasadena, if you recall.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
the
Well, you know,
convention.
it's a big
so
one.
you probably want to stay. There,
yeah, you
probably.
Uber.
Also, also a special shout out to Brian Jennings from Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Brian Jennings.
Who's the proud owner of yet another Monster Party t-shirt. And I say this because I think Brian has bought at least a couple before.
He's gone crazy.
Wow.
So Brian, thank you over and over again for your support. Also want to say a special shout out to previous guest Michael Mesmer, who I was surprised to find in the letters
Oh,
pages of Scary Monsters magazine wearing the Monster Party cap.
That's right. There's a photo of him.
So for listeners, if you recall, that was on our hypnotic horror episode.
Yeah,
That's right.
It was awesome. Awesome.
So the latest issue is Scary Monsters, issue 114. A little bit of trivia for Monster Party fans. It's not exactly an appearance in an issue, it's just the cap. But we've appeared in two other horror magazines in the past. Famous Monsters, issue 287. We had a feature.
That's right. Written by.
David Weiner.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. We'll be forever grateful for that. And Fangoria magazine, we had a feature. It was issue 345. Unfortunately, it was the first digital issue.
Right.
Exclusive digital.
We blame ourselves.
But both those issues are now highly collected.
Yeah.
collector items because Monster Party was in there.
the file is people are just all over that.
They're bidding. It's a bidding war.
Well, I have a couple shout outs here.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about Monsterpalooza, but if you need something to do before that, coming up on October the 11th through the 13th is the LA Comic-Con at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Now, in conjunction with my new friend Jonathan London from the Geekscape podcast, we will be hosting a panel on Saturday, October 12th, called Kaiju versus Giant Robots. It'll be from 4 to 4:50 p.m. in room 306 AB. And it's going to be me, it's going to be Jonathan, it's going to be Tommy Yune. Hey, from Harmony Gold, and Haley Mancini from the Godzilla vs. Podcast Zero podcast. So come on down, check it out. It's bound to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same convention on Saturday, October the 12th, I'll be a contestant on longtime listener Tom Frank's comic game show, Sketch Fighter, at 6 p.m. And I would also like to plug coming up even sooner, as we all know, October is Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes,
And
it
so-
is.
Yes. And so, coinciding with that is the Boobs and Blood International Film Festival, a charity fundraiser for the Keep Abreast Foundation. And a lot of great entertainment going on there. We've got festival honoree Christine Nagayan, Naomi Grossman from American Horror Story, live music from the Stratas, and the movie premiere of Christine's film Girls, Guns, and Blood. Woohoo!
I like all those things.
Yeah, I know. And it all happens Saturday, October 5th at 11110 Victory Boulevard in North Hollywood. For more info, go to boobsandblood.com. And there you have it, listeners.
Boobs and blood.
Also, want to remind our listeners you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV, our Twitter handle at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. Please, if you're whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, please take a moment and write a review. Chances are very good we will read it on the air.
How do you like that?
I like it.
On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Sean Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch any and all anime. And watch out for that tentacle. This intro is going to be flowery.
No,
but
no.
understated.
No, it doesn't have
Understated flowery. He likes me to make a big fanfare of things. But since you are the president of animation, at Harmony, gold, 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 gold.
Among other things.
Things. Wow. Okay. Excitement was right up there and then right down in the can.
I feel animated tonight.
Oh, hey.
Hey! Oh,
Nicely
sorry.
done.
James, did I steal your thunder?
No, all good. All good.
You got another one?
I do not, but
I have an intro I think you'll like.
Oh,
right.
I can't wait.
It's too bad the Monsterverse didn't go anywhere.
You know what?
Or thank God
no,
the
thank you.
monster.
See, I'm with Matt. Thank God.
No, they're trying again, though.
Are they?
Yeah, there's another guy who's going to make some. I forget the.
What is it going to be now?
Maker.
Tom Cruise is going to put more of himself in the movie.
he's gonna make
The
some
Mummy
kind of-
Begins, right?
But they're trying again.
Bring back Brendan Fraser,
You know, you knocked Brendan
the
Fraser.
doughy mummy.
You know what? He was great in the Mummy series.
I enjoyed the first one.
First
I
one.
did like the first one.
I like the second one too.
But it still wasn't a true Universal monster movie.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Sean. What was that?
Yeah, pretend like you're doing the
It
show.
wasn't a true Universal monster
and
movie.
mind
Now
you,
I
wanna
don't-
move
now-
your
now I
mic
don't
over?
sound good.
What?
I think the closest
you
he
know
ever
that's a
got
lie.
was
Yeah.
the first 10 minutes of Van Helsing.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, many people have pointed that out. You're
Yes.
right. In black and white,
Yeah.
it's cool, and after that, garbage.
Right.
Yeah, they should have stopped there.
If they just released that 10-minute short, might
Yeah,
have done
yeah.
better.
We would have said,
again,
"Oh man, I wish the film were
Remember,
longer."
hug the mic.
Oh, hello.
See
Hey.
how good that sounds?
Hey.
Yeah, pretend you're like FM DJ. Hey there, it's Tommy Yune.
To be careful.
Time is 2 a.m. Here's a little weather report.
You had me at 10 a.m.
Radio Norwich.
Here's the Mighty Boosh with some freestyle crimping.
Mighty Boosh.
Okay,
Who's ready to rock?
shall we? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Cowabunga.
All right.
As long as it doesn't get too hot.
Yeah, and if it gets hot, we'll open the door. But I need a little. I've cranked up the AC. So.
We need to make sure Sean doesn't pass out.
Yeah, I know. He's going through menopause, so we're going to make sure that he doesn't. Yeah, right.
Very
do you want
delicate.
an ice pack? Are you okay? One of those 1940s ones with the
Yeah.
little hatch on the top. Sure. Oh, we'll get a steak for your black eye.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I never got that.
really
You know what?
work?
You know the funny thing is, I never got the steak. I got a bag.
I guess
of,
it was cold.
No, I got a bag of
the idea.
peas, and you know how much I hated peas as a kid.
But that makes sense, though.
No, but I felt like I wanted to vomit
but
when
you didn't
I
have
was.
to eat them, right? It was just plastic.
No, but it was close to my skin. It was by
And you
my
could feel
eye.
the peas
Yes,
through the bag.
I
Well,
could.
wrong with just
mocking you.
Yeah,
Yes.
what's wrong with just a ice though? Why
a bag full of tiny green clowns.
Well, see, what it was is
Why a smell of
imagine.
meat?
No, because think about it. If you were
It's cold, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that the idea?
Ice can do that. Why you
That's
to
right,
smell
though.
like
That's right.
meat?
maybe it had something to
Raw
do with
meat all day.
It's the size. You get more surface area against your skin.
And
Large
also,
piece of
you know what
ice.
it is? It's because meat is malleable, so you could
Don't get me turned on.
place the meat on your eye, and it goes in all the grooves and stuff.
Yeah,
If-
all
You know
the
how much
raw
I got to pay a
blood.
hooker to give me meat eye?
And then after you're done, then you get to cook that up and eat that.
Yeah, see? It's win-win.
Win-win.
A perverted barbecue.
But then you get the meat grease in your eye. You're right,
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah.
I never, but I
Disgusting.
Yeah, I never got. I got the cold.
But you
peas.
didn't know that Visine is made from mostly meat. You're not aware of
That's
that?
the meat Visine controversy.
Yeah.
No,
You didn't know that?
no.
Yeah. Visine is, I think, 90.
Why are you looking at James?
James,
Did
isn't
I,
it?
did I ever tell,
96?
Did I ever tell you guys I went to a Visine convention?
Yeah.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
He's on. We got to start this. He is white hot.
On that note,
Well, there is the one that claims to be Visine only tears. It's supposed to be chemically only the stuff you get from tears.
But see, I want only tears. I want real human tears. I want them to
The tears of children.
tear ducts of
Children who had to watch the Star Wars
right
prequels.
or cadavers.
Tonight's episode is brought to you by Visine. It gets the monsters out.
Made from the tears of dead children.
That's horrible. That's
This is a horror
But I thought you would say the tears from frightened children.
No, I went to
or
dead children.
Like the tears from hedge fund managers.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow.
let's-
Hey,
let's
way to
rewrite this
turn-
show.
Way to turn it around there, buddy.
I'm getting notes. It's like two Larrys.
Oh, yeah. I think we should start this now.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's go.
Everyone have their notes?
Yep. Cool.
Are those?
Well, James is covering up his
He's-
notes. His
God,
scroll, his
will it ever
scroll.
end?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Are you really are trying to prevent me from looking at your pathetic notes?
You should just get a magnifying
way-
glass and have them put on a grain of rice.
Have you ever owned a
Is this
typewriter?
a PSAT test or something?
It better be just the PSAT. We're not prepared. Okay, ready?
I'm going to
Here
look
we
at
go.
Sean's computer, okay?
Go. Okay.
We are experiencing a technical difficulty. It's a good...
Remember that like on TV when that would happen?
Yes!
You're watching like your favorite horror movie moment.
There we go, that's
it seemed
better.
to happen all the time. Like
Right.
please stand by.
Do you know what happened during a hockey game? It was this hockey game was going on, and all of a sudden it went quiet, and in the distance you heard this guy go something like, "Hey Sally, suck my dick!" What? And then all of a sudden it went. The screen went black, and then we saw the boop, and then we're experiencing technical difficulties, and then the hockey game came back on. And
What happened to Sally?
well, I don't know what was going on. I'm sure someone pressed the wrong button, and
That's hilarious.
Yeah, for once, a baseball game that I would watch.
So that was not on a 2-second delay.
Or hockey.
No,
Hockey.
no, it was hockey. You know,
Hockey.
hockey that's on the ice skating rink with a little
I'm
puck?
not familiar, no.
Okay.
Isn't that like with Big Bird and
No, Canadians are big into that.
yeah, don't they have Big Bird and Ernie and they're all on the ice? Is that hockey?
Like Sesame Street Ice Capades or something?
That's what I'm thinking of.
You know, I love the ice capades, though.
Of course you
I
do.
loved
Are they
it.
still around?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
they can't be.
Yes,
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they
been on
travel.
all the
How
time.
how inexpensive can that show be? I mean, like, it's just ice and a bunch of shitty costumes.
Oh, how dare you! What about all the talented skaters?
All they got to do is learn how to skate in a costume.
Oh, is that what you
Yeah,
think?
and we
No,
can
no,
get
no.
refugees and teach them how to do
No,
that.
they have people skating all around them and doing jumps and
They're
flips.
like
and-
monkeys in those suits, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. He's
Plus,
right.
They get like Winter Olympic skaters that don't have a job
Okay.
from 8 years ago.
Okay, really quickly.
Should we go back to this?
No, just really quickly. I'll never forget going to this one Ice Capade show, and they said,
I never thought I would hear a story that started with that.
And they, you say,
I forgot them all.
They had Big Bird and stuff. They had all these characters bring out these giant ice wagons, and they said, "Kids, come on
I
down.
remember that.
We're
I
gonna
remember
skate
that,
you."
yeah.
And I remember going. I tried because we were up in the bleacher seats, so I go, "Mom, take it. Yeah, go ahead." And I go running down. I start going down the stairs, and I was stopped. I was stopped because they only allowed the kids in the first class area to go
Yet
in
another person
and get.
you can be mad about.
He's mad at
I
ice.
was livid. No, you guys laugh. I was livid. I was pissed. I was determined one day. I don't know how I'm gonna.
One day what? One day what? You're gonna get to be on ice?
Well, I wanted to go on one of those little ice cart things.
You want me to
And, yeah.
rent a Big Bird costume? We should do this for his birthday.
Yeah.
No.
All right, let's get back to this.
No, I'm sorry. That's
So we redoing
So
this?
if we did that for your birthday, you'd be like, it's just
no,
not the same.
no.
What
I
an
would
asshole.
No. I'd love it. I think that would be a wonderful.
God.
No. I meant it as if I don't want you to have to go through that trouble.
okay. All right.
I'll deal
I
with-
wouldn't mind.
Tommy, this is why I said 4 hours.
No, this is no.
I have a gorilla suit.
I'll deal with my. Oh, and I love that gorilla suit.
Is my audio okay still?
Yes, everybody. God, why do you hate me? Okay, so
I'm
why
telling
don't we?
you. No, I'm telling the story, and all
You're
Sean
still
no.
telling
I'm
the story?
No, I'm
I thought the story
done.
was over.
It is, but all
You didn't get to get on the ice.
Oh, yes, but then Sean goes into, hey, let's talk about me now. Let's talk about
Because
my.
you just
sound."
talked about you, and you were done.
But I thought it was appropriate.
So
It was
now we need
timely.
commentary on your feelings about after that. Yes, you were sad, and you wish that you. Now you're mad at ice. I get it. I got it.
That'll be the name of your biography.
Mad at ice.
Larry Strode. Mad at ice.
Okay.
I wasn't mad at the ice.
Well, what happened?
I was
Something's
mad at the
going on.
ice.
It's chaos.
I was
It's chaos.
I was mad at the ice capades. And if you want to know, have I ever been back? The answer is no. I'm although I'm a big fan of Dorothy Hamill, you know, she
Peggy
was.
Fleming.
I like that hair.
No, I was not a fan of
Remember
Peggy.
Peggy Fleming?
She
I like that hair.
but she was
Dorothy
Wait, I
Hamill
get mixed
cut.
up. Peggy Fleming,
Look,
Dorothy Hamill.
Look,
Dorothy Hamill.
Tommy has a
hair?
life.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that
Yeah,
he has
yeah.
to go back to.
Peggy
Yes.
Fleming was 70s.
I'm fine.
Dorothy Hamill was
I'm
80s.
just a fly on the wall listening to all this.
All right. I'm so sorry.
Peggy Fleming was rude at a restaurant that I worked at,
Oh.
and Dorothy Hamill was lovely.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bet they're all a piece of work. Okay. Now, so why don't we take this? Why don't we take this? We just from the very big topper.
Don't we have to?
No, I don't think so.
You do whatever you want. What do you want?
I mean, if you want to, we could do that.
You can just start. You can just do your. You can do your introduction. I thought that was a great. That was a great one though. Our animate.
And we could just do it.
Have that part.
If we do it, yeah, I think so. The only thing that,
think
that
so. We have to make sure you have.
do you really want me to go back and listen to the whole fucking thing right now?
You're good.
I'm just saying this is still recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So the only thing that we didn't hear was when we didn't hear it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So I was thinking maybe we could pick it up from the.
You're about to make like a similarity between the Big Eyes and the Big Show, the Big Topic.
Oh fuck it! Let's just start it from the beginning. It'll just be easy.
Go.
Okay, ready?
Okay, can you do that excitement again? Because I thought that was really great.
Yes.
Because I did.
And
my
I can and see what happens is that no matter what, I can always cut the one with the other. If
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let's just do it this way. Okay. That way
I'm
we'll
so
still.
sorry. Normally this doesn't happen. Okay, this is a rare. That's a rare occurrence.
Yeah, we had a little.
Well, I love this rare occurrence.
Okay, let's do it.
I feel
Ready?
lucky.
How do I say now for list? Yeah. Man. Holy shit. Long week. Line. Okay.
Listener now, shout out.
I say time for a listener shout out.
Wait, are you doing? What are you doing? How are you doing this? Are you throwing it to me first?
With words.
Or what's the words?
Okay, so on that note, and watch out for the tentacle.
Yeah. It made me laugh.
Watch out for that tentacle.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to think of anything else that was ongoing, but the tentacle.
We did do the hentai justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up, Sean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
No,
that's when I
it was on my list.
researching this. Is like
No, you have to.
I had
Yeah.
heard of it.
You have to.
You can't not.
Right?
We didn't talk about magical girls.
Oh, we didn't get to Sailor Moon.
That's right, Sailor Moon.
Another term I had.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
Yeah, forgot Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon.
People, they're gonna kill us.
Shoujo? Is that what they call it?
But,
Shoujo?
but maybe you could put this in. Say, well, at least they mentioned. Yes, we know. We didn't talk about Sailor Moon. We will talk about Sailor Moon in the next one.
Also, super flat. Have you heard that term? Super flat is an animation term. It's like there's all kinds of stuff I was like reading up on. I was like, I had no idea.
Shonen.
There's always look.
Look, there's going to be something.
We're
okay?
gonna
Yeah.
we'll revisit everything.
Yes.
Totally.
But I mean, there's so many things that someone's gonna go. What are you talking about? You know,
Yeah. It's the way it is.
whatever. Just fuck off.
No, we don't want anyone to fuck off. We we want to engage them in conversation. Now, thank you for listening. You're right. We did not talk about that particular thing, and we will talk about and thanks, we'll talk about it on the next one, the volume 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sailor Moon.
Yes.
Which is that hentai? It should be, right?
No.
No, I'm
mean,
just
maybe-
kidding. No, it's not.
There's hentai versions.
There
of
have
it.
been hentai versions, yeah.
Oh, really? Have there?
Okay.
This will go in the extras, so we've already talked about it.
There you
Well,
go.
Sailor Moon was mentioned briefly. We just didn't discuss it really.
Yeah.
Was it mentioned?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Didn't when we were in Japan, didn't we get a photo?
Yes.
in that one.
Yeah.
There's a
with
great
bunch
photo of us.
Sailor Moon
Yeah,
characters.
yeah.
We were actually in the Toei studio
Yeah.
museum
Yeah,
in the anime part where
That's
they had
right.
posters of all their movies.
Sure.
I know. Yeah.
And statues.
If we had talked about Sailor Moon for our picture that we do, if we should have all been different color Sailor Moons,
Right. That's true.
right?
You know, I was thinking about your cosplay idea.
Which one?
Sailor Moon in drag. But you know
That's
what?
been done.
You know what? Heels? I can barely walk around in sneakers.
Wow.
Heels ain't gonna happen.
Well, we're dude Sailor Moon, so we're like Doc
know-
Martens.
No, I'm
You know, James, that ship has sailed.
Good.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's been
That's
done.
supposed to be a pun. Sailor Moon.
Oh, the ship is sailed.
You didn't even get it. I was trying to.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. No, here's the problem, Sean. Is that you're too good of an actor? Because when he does them, it's like
Yeah.
you know he's getting on the runway.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
You know when the
Right.
and you know, and it goes to show just how good James is at this.
Yeah.
You need to work on it.
Well, no,
That's his domain.
his was like
That
a
was just-
dramatic reading. It was like, well, you know, that ship has
Sean is
sailed.
master of the
he threw it away.
Sean is master of the deadpan. That's
Yeah, yeah. So we were like, really?
Is he master of the deadpan?
He's master of the deadpan.
Yeah.
Did
you know that?
Did you know that?
No, I did not.
It was.
I've known him for over 20-some years. It's like,
Larry. It was foretold. There will be a man,
a deadpan man.
an unkept liver. Okay,
All right.
let's do it.
This one-
All right, right? On that note, no. See, it's timing. My comedic timing. It's that good. You can't learn this, Larry.
No, this vision of Sean on a stage going, "I'm Shawn Sheridan, deadpan man," you know, and I just
First of all, he's not Deadpan Man. He's master of Deadpan. Deadpan Man.
That's a good character, though. Deadpan man.
Which could be like-
bedpan man.
Which we also didn't talk about Anapan Man.
Pen Man. Yeah.
Anpan Man?
Anpan Man.
Anpan.
What's Ant-Pan man?
He's
Anpan.
got this pancake face and a big nose. You've seen
What?
it. You've
Yeah.
seen it. He's unavoidable.
Is that
He's
like the pie?
Oh wait, is that the big statue we saw in Japan? What's that one? That character that you see everywhere?
Is he?
It's
What is he?
like,
He's a biscuit or what is his
Yeah,
thing?
he's like a pancake head. He's a pancake head.
I don't know what that
Look,
is.
There's
There's
another
some-
one that's Doraemon. And
That's what I'm thinking of.
That's very
Yeah,
popular.
What is
yeah,
that?
What is
About
that?
him
Is
either.
that from anime?
That's like a cat.
But is it from
it's-
anime or
yeah,
manga?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Anpan Man is like a cookie or something,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, a cookie.
And sometimes he gives pieces of his head to people to eat.
Something like that.
Would you eat it? Would you eat it?
I
No, no.
If
I-
Anpan Man showed up
No,
and
because
said,
here's
"Eat
the thing.
eat my head."
Here's the thing. At first,
You're going to
to
offend him. You're in Japan. You don't want to piss.
No,
Ant-Man Man off?
I would say I'm allergic to that cookie because the
You're
thing
allergic
is,
to my head.
as slowly but
How dare
surely
you.
as he starts to take off pieces of his head, he'd
as
start to get a
nothing
little
left.
slower. He'd be all like,
Yeah, that's true.
"Here's my head."
Oh, I'd love to see that.
That'd be messed up, and he'd like fall over stuff, and
But then you could-
and then his
and
head
then
would
that-
fall into cement, and it'd crack into 100 pieces.
And then the Japanese Charlton Heston will show up and go, "You did it.
You ate him.
You ate his brain."
you bloody baboon! No. I don't
Good
want to
stuff.
do that.
You
I
go
don't.
into. I went into Toys R Us in Tokyo once, and all it was a little bit of Ultraman, but it was all Gundam and Anpan Man. That was it.
Anpan Man,
Proliferation of all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
My niece, Atragon.
Etrigan.
Yeah.
Your niece is Atragon? Her name is
Her
Atragon?
name is Lizzie, but
We sort of named her
Nickname her.
Atragon.
we nicknamed her
before
Atragon
she was
for short.
born.
Which is a great
It's a
name.
long name, but we shortened it to Atragon.
Okay.
But for a while there, she was really into Anpan Man. Okay. And so I watched a few, and it's pretty surreal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about Ant-Pant Man.
Anpan, no. Anpan.
Ant-Pan.
So this is what we have to talk about the next time round.
I think we did it.
Make notes.
No, this is because this doesn't count. We is our, we have
I think
to.
it counts. I think we've exhausted.
No.
We covered it.
I'm,
I think there's nothing left.
I think
on
we
Ant
covered
Farmer.
it. Yeah.
no, all we know is he got ahead of as a cookie and he gives it to
That's
people.
it.
That's all I know.
That's it.
That's
Do you
all
need to
any
know
of us
anymore?
knows. Yeah, that's it.
He's a good cookie head.
Oh, you know what? I bet there's more to this cookie head than what you guys just
Probably. But you have to read my slash fiction.
said. All right.